Welcome back to another edition of the Rodcast. We like to call it the Freak Flag Feel Good Fake It Till You Make It. Ric Flair, woo! Football 512 Friday edition of the Rodcast, and we got a lot of football to talk about. NFL season kicked off last night, and what a thrilling game it was. That's why it is America's favorite TV show. Oh man, America is addicted to football, and that game last night was a reason why. We'll get to that. We'll review it, and we'll preview all the games coming up this weekend. Texans, we'll get into their game versus the Colts. Also, Cowboys kicking off things versus the Browns. We'll preview those matchups to kick off the NFL weekend. We'll also get into, of course, the big matchup between Texas and Michigan. We'll continue to break it down from every different angle. We'll also give you some predictions on that Texas-Michigan game a little bit later on in the show. We also have all of your usual favorites. We got what the facts, what the stats. We got who said that. We got off the record, your big topic for the big fat poll today. We also have, of course, have your 512 Friday. So we're jam-packed. Lots of football to discuss on the show. Not enough time to do it, but we'll get right to it. Before we do, let's introduce you to the rest of the crew, because he's one of the hardest working members of the ARN family. Got a hustler spirit, period. Not sure what he's paid, but pretty damn sure he's underpaid. Ain't no 401k for this hustler, and he's a hustle man of many talents. It is our friend, co-host, and neighbor. It is Patrick Davis, y'all. What's going on, Patrick? How you doing, brother?
I'm doing good, man. Got to watch some good football last night, which is always a good thing to start off your weekend. Is a good Thursday night game. We know there hasn't always been good Thursday night games, but we got one there last night. Seeing X-Man do what he did last night was a lot of fun to watch as well. And now just ready getting into, and this is, I'll tell you this, Rod, I really thought the dread of Michigan was going to hit us by, or at least hit me by Friday morning. It has not hit me yet.
No Michigan dread.
It has not hit me. I
don't know what the line is now, but I think fans are more confident.
I'm prepared. I'm not. I don't feel I'm overconfident, but I definitely thought that I was going to be a lot more apprehensive come Friday, and thought maybe this was going to be one of those where you're like, okay, maybe we oversold it too early, and it hasn't been that so far. Everything you look at, I still feel pretty good about it, which is a good thing to say on a Friday morning, because I thought by Thursday we'd be out of it, but Friday morning I still feel pretty good. So unless Rod, you give me some crazy take today that is going to make me feel bad, or you guys on the text line or anybody starts giving me some bad juju, I feel pretty good. Going into the weekend. Feel good about the Texans playing the Colts. The Cowboys Browns is going to be a fun game. I think it's a great test for the Cowboys early on in the season.
I'm not really sure about. Yeah, I'm not really sure about that.
I think it's going to be a really good test for this Cowboys offense if they can play well. And we know, again, they're good a regular season team, and I know you get lit up on the text line. Doesn't matter.
Concerned about the run game for the Cowboys concerns me.
Yes,
that's about them. But the Texans, I'm with you. I feel supremely confident. I feel really confident in the Longhorns and their matchup versus Michigan. I've listened to a lot of Michigan analysis from the Michigan side, and it has not changed my opinion. Usually I can listen to some very detailed breakdown about the other team and go, oh man, they got something we need to be concerned about. I still don't necessarily right now, in my opinion. I see more ways for Texas to win than for Michigan. I'll just say it like that.
Yeah.
There are more paths to victory for Texas than there are for Michigan. And I think I haven't looked at the line, but I think that's why the line is where it was.
Yeah.
I think it was at 7.5. Because the path to Michigan it's very narrow. The path for Michigan to win is narrow. It's like, they got to be able to run the football. If they can't run the football, that's all she wrote offensively. And defensively, they got to stop a lot of different things for Texas.
They do.
Yeah, I think they'll stop the run game just because of how they're built. But everything else, all those weapons we talk about,
feeling good.
They ain't got 5 Will Johnsons up there. They got 1. He's damn good, but they ain't got 5 of them. So no, I'm with you. I'm excited about that matchup, and I'm still very optimistic, and I think that's rare.
And I'll tell you what, I'm normally
matchup this big.
I'm normally not a huge fan, especially at games like this being the 11 a.m. game. Prefer it to be later in the day. But I'm like, you know what? I don't need the anticipation of it all day. I feel pretty good about it. I think I'll wake up tomorrow and then be like, let's go play some football. Let's get this out. Let's get this done, and then celebrate the rest of Saturday. That's what I'm thinking. So I'm okay with it being an 11 a.m. kickoff.
Because you'll have a couple of those throughout the season where it'll be late, and then you got to wait all day, And then, you pit in your stomach, you start getting nervous because you're waiting all day, and then you're watching some other teams get beat or upset, and you start freaking out. That's watching too much football will also freak you out about your team. So, yeah, I'm with you. I agree with you. I'm going through it with you too, brother. I'm going with you too.
Let me introduce you to my co-host who does watch too much football. He's a proud alumni of DBU. He's got more papers than Dunder Mifflin and watches more film than Siskel and Ebert. He is the new Rod, father of Austin Sports Radio, Mr. Rod Babers.
Thank you for the intro, brother. I appreciate that. As always, we'll get into, of course, a ton of different topics on the show. Of course, lots of it will be dominated by, we already know, Longhorns, Cowboys, and Texans. So we'll preview Cowboys and Texans, their weekend matchups coming up next hour. We'll do that next hour. Next segment, we'll go behind the burnt orange curtain, and then we'll continue to preview Texas versus Michigan. Also, because of the hard work of my man Patrick, we do have audio from Steve Sarkisian in his Zoom call. Man, he does a lot of different media availabilities now with the SEC. There's an SEC one, then there's the Monday one he does, and then I think there's another one in there. That's like a Zoom, another Zoom.
Yeah, because he normally
three times a week he's available.
Yeah, because he normally did Mondays and then Wednesday, Thursday, I think it was, for like the media availability where they would do the post practice. But now it's done via Zoom, so it's done more like the press conference than him just walking up to a group of 10 reporters and being asked the questions.
Yeah, it's available. Yeah, exactly. It's great. And it's just for him. And I know he does also the show. He does like
I think he was on like Colin Cowherd recently too. And
man, he's just doing a lot.
He's all around, man.
The man, no doubt about it. He is a busy man. So we do have some audio from Steve Sarkisian. My man Patrick was able to get some of that. So we'll hear from him when we go behind the burnt orange curtain, talk about that Texas-Michigan matchup as well. So that is pretty much the plan. Before we do any of that, though, of course, we always get you caught up and get you educated, updated, and informed on all the top stories of the day with Patrick Davis and the Horn Headlines.
All right, your Horn Headlines brought to you by Top Gun Rentals and Lawn Equipment. In the MLB, the Astros lost the last game of their series 1-0 to the Reds yesterday, getting swept and knocking them to 5-5 in their last 10 games. Hunter Brown had a quality start, pitching 6 scoreless innings, striking out 6, but the offense could only muster 4 hits. The Astros now return home to take on the Diamondbacks, sending Framber Valdez to the mound tonight. The Rangers won the first game of their series with the Angels 3-1 last night, with Adolis Garcia's first inning 3-run homer powering the team to victory. Cody Bradford pitched 6 innings, only giving up 1 run in one of his best outings since returning from the injury. And the win is the 3rd straight for the Rangers and the 8th in the last 10 games. Gerson Garabito gets the start for the Rangers tonight after being called up for the minors earlier this week. And in the NFL, the Chiefs pulled off a 27-20 win over the Ravens in the season kickoff last night after a game-tying touchdown was reversed in the final seconds due to Isaiah Likely's toes landing just out of bounds. Xavier Worthy made the most of his opportunity, scoring 2 touchdowns on 3 touches with 68 yards of total offense. Tonight, the Packers take on the Eagles in Sao Paulo, Brazil, and as the rest of the league begins on Sunday, with the Texans starting their season in Indianapolis against the Colts and Dallas traveling to Cleveland to face the Browns. And that is your Horn Headlines.
All right. Thank you, Patrick, for the Horn Headlines. We'll get to breaking down this Chiefs-Ravens matchup. And, game of inches, literally came down to being a game of inches. That, like I said, that's why America is addicted to football, is that it's a great example of it last night. And if there's a cure for it, we don't want it. We don't need it. All right. As Diana Ross will say, we don't need it. We don't want it. Let's talk about Xavier Worthy, though, because I feel like everybody knew this was coming. Like, this is, you can't, nobody's going to say, oh man, you made some grandiose, prediction, prognostication about it. No, when the draft happened,
yes.
and the Bills
trade away
their pick, everybody knew it. I was like, no, you're just gonna let it happen. You're just gonna let Xavier Worthy, the fastest human to ever go to the NFL Combine, and you're just gonna let him go to Andy Reid, arguably the most creative offensive mind, like in the NFL in the last 20 years. You're just gonna do that? Why would you do that? And they did it. And I guess the excuse was he wouldn't work in Buffalo or something like that. He wouldn't work with them. I get it. Whatever. I'm sure they got their own reason for it. But we all knew this was coming. We all knew he was going to add explosivity and verticality to that offense. And guys, this is one thing. I'm a Texans fan. I'm a Longhorn fan, so I'm loving this. But I'm also a Texans fan, so I'm hating this because I know this is going to make the Chiefs that much tougher to beat.
Yeah.
Guys, and I've said it before, that passing game it was starting to become anemic. Like they still won a Super Bowl. They still won a Super Bowl. But we talked about the wide receivers, right? They had 44 drop passes last year, the worst wide receiver core in the NFL. We talked about even during the draft. I remember coming up with these stats. Kansas City's total distance in air yards of all their 2023 touchdown passes was just 101 yards. It was 30th in the NFL, ahead of the Carolina Panthers and the Jets. And those were like two of the worst starting quarterbacks in the league. Their offensive touchdowns on plays 10 plus yards, they were 31st in the league. They had 7 of them. Carolina had 8. Such possessions. I mean, if you go look at their the average length of a Patrick Mahomes touchdown pass prior to obviously this starting of this season, last season, since 2019, it was 17 yards in 2019. It was, you look at 2020, it was 13. 2021, it was 8.5. 2022 was 4.5, and last year was less than 4 yards. They had basically become a short passing game, just a dink and dunk passing game. It averaged 6.2 yards per attempt in the playoffs, was his second lowest versus Baltimore in the playoffs of his playoff career. He wasn't good at throwing the ball past 10 yards because he didn't have any receivers other than Travis Kelce. They still won the Super Bowl, and that's how good he was. And then they let him get Xavier Worthy. And here's the stat. The Chiefs had just 4 touchdowns of 20-plus yards last season because they had no explosivity or verticality in the offense. Xavier Worthy had 2 of them in the first game.
Yeah.
So, problem solved. They lost. They didn't have any verticality or explosivity in the offense. Really, it was just Patrick Mahomes working his magic, and the bromance between him and Travis Kelce. And now Rashee Rice has come of age. And remember what I told you yesterday? It's basically going to be Rashee Rice, the true number 1.
Yep.
Xavier Worthy, your vertical threat, and then Travis Kelce and the bromance. And you got to pick your poison because you can't defend all 3. You can't double Rashee Rice, their true number 1, because he had 9 targets for 7 receptions with 103 yards, 78 yards after the catch. So they're scheming him open with yak yardage opportunities. So he's the true number 1. Xavier Worthy is the exotic explosive weapon that can hurt you at any time. Maybe the most dangerous person on the offense. So you got to decide, like, hey, man, am I going to put a safety on the top of that guy? You're going to double the number 1 or put a safety on the top of the ridiculous speed demon. All right. Or you going to try to bracket and double Travis Kelce, who's going to work the short to intermediate area now with more space than ever because you better be backing them safeties up. And which one? You can't defend all 3. You can't allocate resources to all 3. You got to pick your poison, and you will be wrong because Patrick Mahomes would find out which one you are defending one-on-one, and he will take it.
And then we saw Noah Gray.
The offense now.
Noah Gray just would sit out there and they go, just go to the middle of the field. There's not going to be anybody there.
Nobody's worried.
Not going to be anybody there.
That's a great one. Nobody's defending you, man.
I get it, but they're trying to double 3 guys right now. you're fine.
That's where you're at now. Yeah. I can't believe they let it happen. But Bills, this is your fault.
Yeah,
the Buffalo Bills. This is your fault.
I mean, and that
all your fault.
That the reception that Xavier Worthy got for the touchdown was when Humphreys thought he had a safety.
Yeah,
he just let him go.
Right. Yeah, you're right. He did. He
just goes, well, clearly I've got a safety because they wouldn't leave me on an island over here with the speedster, would they? And they did.
And they did.
And he got burned. And you just turn around and watch the touchdown.
Oh, as a Longhorn fan, I love it. We all knew. I mean, that ending around, guys, we've seen that. Sark runs that play with Xavier Worthy. We've actually seen it with X-Men. And actually, they ran it the last time the NFL actually. Remember that score, the Detroit Lions versus the 49ers in the NFC title game, and that Jameson Williams scored that 42-yard touchdown on the reverse. That essentially is the same concept.
Yeah.
And the Chiefs had ran something like that in preseason. We talked about they gave him he had a rush like that in preseason. So they've been dialing it up. And like I said, Sark runs that exact play. They call it like a stutter X concept. It's like a stutter X concept of different kinds. And he's a reduced split on the other side and runs the reverse. Like I said, Sark runs that. I've seen it in the NFL before, and I'm not surprised that was the first touch, by the way. First touch that Xavier Worthy had. 5:55 left in the first quarter. First touch ended up being an NFL touchdown, 21-yarder, explosive play. Yeah. So I think we tried to warn you in a quantitative sense, but everybody knew that was coming. Like that. Yeah. And that's just going to be now. That's a problem for the rest of the NFL to try to figure out. All because we know with Buffalo he would still be dangerous, but he wouldn't be this dangerous.
Well, because in Buffalo too, it's not the sense of you have the quarterback that literally you can kind of just go downfield over and over and over again, and he's just going to wait until he has it. And I don't need to overuse you because I've got Kelsey and I've got Rashee Rice, so I'm not trying to shove it down your throat, but at the same point, when I see that when they miss you and there's not a safety over the top, I got you. And I think there was like one play where he missed him, where he could have had him, and he just didn't see him in time. But other than that, and then the one pass where the one target he got that he didn't catch it in the end zone, he actually made a good defensive play because the ball was thrown behind him. Because I think, again, you're just not used to that speed.
Like that. Yeah.
And so he went up and got his right hand up and got the, instead of it letting it be an interception, he gets a PBU on the offense. But that was one that was technically thrown behind him, which you don't see very often, but that's what happens when you have a very fast wide receiver.
Yes, it is. So anyway, that's congrats to Xavier Worthy, but we all knew that was going to be a problem, and it's going to be the Texans' problem too. And if your team is in the AFC, you're going to have to deal with it. That's just the way it is. All right, let's get into the actual game itself, because man, it was a thrilling game, by the way, and it came down to, and you got to give the Ravens credit. I thought, 150 left on the clock is when I believe the Ravens got the ball on their own 13-yard line. Within the Chiefs had a 27-20 lead, and they marched down the field. They had that big play, that 38-yarder to Rashad Bateman, and ended up coming down to the final 10 seconds in the final two plays. There were two plays basically where in the final 10 seconds, the Ravens really had a chance to win. And it would have been from their own 10-yard line. It was second and goal. And this is the one where Zay Flowers was open.
Yeah.
That everybody say they missed him. And do we have this audio of Lamar Jackson? So I didn't. And so Lamar Jackson in the post game, and a lot of people claim, he just missed a wide open Zay Flowers. He claims that he wasn't targeting Zay Flowers, and listen to the beginning of this though. And then we'll kind of talk about, I think, the miscalculation and mistake by the Ravens in this game. Now they made a lot of mistakes, but they made a critical error on these last two plays, and it had nothing to do with Lamar Jackson. This was a coaching decision, in my opinion. But here's Lamar Jackson discussing that last play.
Play before to Flowers, did that ball get hit out of your hand, or was that just
No, actually, it was. I went scramble. I seen Chris Jones was on Justice Hill. Justice Hill was blocking Chris Jones, so I was trying to help Justice out, and I tried to get out of the pocket, and I seen Bateman flying across. So I'm thinking Bateman gonna stop, and as I'm throwing the ball, I see Zay flying across. I'm like, can't. That wasn't intended for Zay Flowers, so. Yeah, I was teed off about that because I'm like, if I would have held on to a little bit more, I would have just fired it to Zay for the touchdown. Yeah, like when I threw the ball, I seen him. I'm like I want to say something else, but I'm like, damn, shit happens.
Okay, so the first part of that is what struck me, and then I went back and watched it, and on both plays, the second and goal and the third and goal, and the play where likely his foot is out of bounds, Chris Jones is being blocked by the running back.
Yeah.
Both of them. On both of the plays. They didn't even make the adjustment on the other play because they moved Chris Jones around the formation, and they were just going, I guess, a simple slide protection where they were just sliding the protection one way, and then the running back supplements the protection on the backside there. And they slid the protection to the left, and Chris Jones ends up one-on-one on a running back both times. And he's the one that causes the pressure. And Lamar Jackson even says, he's like, I saw Chris Jones.
Yeah.
I saw Chris Jones. I'm like, I gotta move around. And obviously he got it to Likely in the second one, but that was still a Chris Jones pressure on those last two plays. And the Chris Jones pressure gets there because he's matched up on Justice Hill against Chris Jones. That I don't even know. That is a dang coaching mistake, guys. That's a dang coaching mistake. I don't know who's to blame for that, and maybe it's on the player who sets the protection. So maybe that's Lamar Jackson or the center who's setting the protection. But that's a miscalculation. That's why he didn't have the time. Otherwise, he'd have had the time to see Zay Flowers. All right, and it on the second and goal, which he didn't because Chris Jones was applying the pressure, and on the third and goal, Chris Jones applies the pressure again. And that's why the throw may be a little high to Isaiah Likely. It was just that. That's wild. Chris Jones just earned his money. There you go. I mean, he's earned it. Well, he already earned it because he helps him win Super Bowls too. But I can't believe they did it. They allowed on the most critical downs of the game a running back to block Chris Jones. So whoever made that mistake, I believe that the game being a game of inches, you have probably an offensive tackle blocking them. You probably stand a better chance of at least getting another half a second of a clean pocket so you can make an accurate throw. That's crazy.
Yeah, it was that offensive line all game for the Ravens was not doing great. And every once in a while they would have a couple good, downs where they would give them a little bit of a clean pocket. But for most part in that entire game, the pressure was coming fast. And Lamar Jackson was having to get out of that pocket and start moving. And, you saw that Derrick Henry just wasn't really effective trying to run up the middle. They just couldn't get him any holes, and they were able to stack the box there. And then even when Lamar Jackson scrambled, he started to get some, but because they just basically started to put a spy on him and try to make him beat him downfield and let guys get downfield because he wasn't hitting any passes downfield.
Yeah. No, it was a strange, I don't know, kind of a strange game plan too by Baltimore because I thought they were having some success throwing the football downfield. When they threw it beyond the line of scrimmage, I mean, he was averaging over 9 yards per attempt. Early on in the game, they had all these throws that were at or behind the line of scrimmage, and they weren't, I don't think they were having much success with those kinds of throws. But Lamar Jackson, you're right, 12 scrambles. I think it was 12 total scrambles that he had. So 75 of his 122 rushing yards just came on scrambles alone. He did have some design runs too, but yeah, I mean, that was the third. If you go look at his scramble rate, I believe it was the third highest rate of scrambles for him in a game that he's had. Yeah, you go look at his third highest rate in the last 4 seasons, I should say. So not in the last 4 seasons, that was his third highest rate of scrambles. So he ran a lot. He ran a ton. And it's honestly, that's an element you can't really account for as a team when, that's 3 different plays in one. You got the scramble drill because he also threw a touchdown while scrambling after the initial play. And then you got him as a runner, and him as a runner is as dangerous as any runner in the open field in the NFL. So Kansas City, Baltimore, it was a hell of a game. I mean, I think Baltimore really kind of hurt themselves in a number of ways. I brought up the Chris Jones thing earlier. But also I don't think they had much of a plan in terms of a better pass protection plan against Spags. And we talked about this yesterday, what was going to be the big factor. Spagnuolo blitzing and the way that he pressures Lamar Jackson. And that was his MO. Every time he plays Lamar Jackson, he has these absurd pressures and pressure packages out of his sub packages. And I don't think they were ready for it. And they move Chris Jones around all the time.
Yeah, I'll be curious too if we see a difference of how teams guard the tight end position, because we just saw them pretty much trying to stop Mark Andrews because that has been the guy for Lamar for so many years. But it was all about Zay Likely. That was the guy in that passing game. And I mean, they threw to Zay Flowers a decent amount of times, but he just wasn't necessarily getting downfield. Those were a lot of shorter passes, so he didn't get the yardage on there. Isaiah Likely was the guy over and over again, and you might have to shift your offense a little bit. And I know you don't want to let Mark Andrews go, but you kind of have to now and shift over some Isaiah Likely if you're guarding the Ravens, because, I mean, that was That was a Clint. I mean, he should have had another touchdown if he would have that ball would have been just a little bit more inside, or if he would have positioned him a little bit, a couple inches, he would have been inside and gets the touchdown.
Yeah. Or he wore white cleats, as Patrick Mahomes suggested. Just he might have got it if he just wore some white cleats, because they wouldn't have been able to tell the difference between his toe, the tip of his toe, and the line. No, you're right. I mean, that's a good point. That's with the Ravens. That could make them even more dangerous. But I mean, the Ravens, like I said, they had a shot to win. So I think this ultimately for the Ravens, you can look at it as something that can build confidence with them, because they had a really good chance. If they have one of those downs where Chris Jones isn't being blocked by a running back, I think that helps them. I also for the Ravens, I think those defensive losses, the losses they've had with the defensive staff, not with the personnel, I think it's going to take them a while to acclimate. Remember, Zach Orr now is the new defensive coordinator for them, because they lost Mike McDonald, because he became the head coach of the Seattle Seahawks, and they lost a lot of other guys. We talked about it. Denard Wilson, who's the defensive coordinator now for the Tennessee Titans. Remember, he was on that staff. So they lost a lot of their think tank defensively. But like Zach Orr now, he was the linebackers coach. Now he's the DC. Anthony Weaver was the D-line coach. He's now the Dolphins defensive coordinator. Like I said, Denard Wilson's now the defensive coordinator for the Titans, and he was the DB coach, and Mike McDonald even. So that, I think that's a big part of it too. We talked about the coverage bust with Xavier Worthy. So I think they got to tighten up some things. But man, with the Kansas City Chiefs, all you can hope is for it to come down to a game-winning drive, either for your defense to defend them or for your offense to have a chance, because that's how good Kansas City is. And this may be one of the best. We talked about this yesterday. This may be one of the best versions of Kansas City. That's the scary part.
Yeah. I mean, Pacheco looked pretty good too.
Yeah. The defense, I think, might be it could have a running game, and the defense might be a top 10, top 12 defense. And in addition to that, now you have verticality back with that offense. He hadn't had that since Tyreek Hill left.
Yeah.
And that's a pain in the that is a headache to have to defend that along with all the other elements of that Andy Reid offense. So that's going to be pretty good. All right, something else I wanted to get to here while we got a little bit of time. We'll go behind the burnt orange curtain next segment, and we'll talk about the Texas versus Michigan matchup, and also something I think Sark, because I know Sark watched a lot of football, and he talks to NFL coaches, something that he could have learned from that win for the Kansas City Chiefs. There was one trend that was just glaring for the Chiefs in the first half, and I got it from Next Gen Stats. So we'll get into that too coming up. But how about this stat about Lamar Jackson? Mind-blowing stat. 1-5 versus the Chiefs now. 1-5. That's his record overall versus the Chiefs. Another team that he has a terrible record versus is the Steelers. He's been hurt a lot, so in that division, sometimes he has missed playing the Steelers. He's 1-3 versus the Steelers. 1-5 versus the Chiefs. And what's his record in the playoffs? 2-4? Man, and he's gonna see the Chiefs in the playoffs a lot of times. He's got to play the Steelers in that division. That is, he's got to get over those. He's got to overcome those hurdles.
Yeah,
that's something going on with him and the Chiefs. He's got to exercise those demons, and him and the Steelers. Strangely, Tomlin's kind of got Lamar Jackson.
It'll be. I mean, you could tell he was running that offense a lot more. Like that was a lot more Lamar Jackson's offense than it's ever been. And so I wonder if throughout the season he'll get a little bit more comfortable, and that will help him out. But you saw points where he did the right thing, and there was points where he didn't necessarily. And whoever was handling protections there at the end, you're 100% right. You gotta be able to pick up.
I mean,
Chris Jones,
the best defensive player in the league potentially, and you got and nothing against Justice Hill, but Justice Hill should not be blocked. Justice Hill should never have been in that situation.
No,
he should have never been put in that situation. Have to block Chris Jones, who maybe like behind now that Aaron Donald's retired. I don't know if there is a more dominant defensive lineman than Chris Jones. So I think that stood out to me, and I was like, oh man, that's crazy. But it's something when you can have a really good record versus Lamar Jackson. It says a lot. What's Lamar Jackson's record versus the NFC? Like 20-1 or something like that against NFC teams, like 20-2. It's a ridiculous record because they never see him. Mike Tomlin sees him twice a year, and the Chiefs get to see him more because they're in the AFC. So if you're a team that has to play Lamar Jackson, there are a couple of blueprints that work really well, or at least work well enough for you to be able to try to, beat Lamar Jackson or neutralize him, because that's really tough to do. All right. Let's get to the break so we can get to some Texas football conversation, and we'll go behind the Burnos curtain. We'll hear from Steve Sarkisian on the other side, and we'll talk more about this Texas-Michigan matchup right here on the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis. I'm Lifetime Longhorn. Rod Davis coming back on the horn. All right, welcome back to the Rodcast. Let's get to some Sark audio here as we go behind the burnt orange curtain. Let's start with the opening statement from Sark yesterday. It was really positive, and seems like the guys have been having a good week of practice so far. Here's Steve Sarkisian.
I would say, first of all, it was, again, kind of 2 weeks in a row, really proud of the way our guys worked. And I thought this week of preparation is always challenging when it's your first time coming off a game and having to review a game and then get it into the next game and finding that routine. And, as always, like I've been praising the veterans on our team, the leaders on our team for showing the way to our younger players and how to do that. And I think one good sign for us is we progressively have gotten better throughout the week of being intentional at practice, what we're trying to accomplish, understanding the whys we're doing what we're doing. And inevitably it's capped off with a really good week of work. I feel good about the state of mind that our guys are in. I think they're excited, but yet focused. And obviously we're looking forward to the opportunity.
All right, that's Sark talking about the week of practice. He also got into the wide receiver rotation, and I wonder what it's going to look like versus Michigan. We got a chance to really see how the depth of it versus Colorado State, had a different receiver lead you in targets and receptions. That was Isaiah Bond, and you had Matthew Golden was your red zone guy. He had 2 touchdowns in the red zone, including the no-look pass. You had obviously the young phenom and prodigy Ryan Wingo. He led you in yards and yak yards, and Jonte Cook had your longest reception and led you in yards per reception. So what it's going to look like versus Michigan, and how deep is that wide receiver rotation now? Is it 6 deep? DeAndre Moore started the game and didn't even have a target. Here's Sark talking about the depth of that wide receiving group.
Yeah, I still think we're a little bit of a work in progress in that, we have 1 game sample size. And even at that, it was a little bit limited just because of how the game went. But I will say it was comforting to know that I didn't have to leave guys on the field as they were getting fatigued, as you could noticeably see them getting fatigued, that we had enough confidence in the next wave or the guy behind that guy to put him on the field. And all they did was give me even more confidence, whether it was Ryan Wingo, Jonte Cook, Silas Bolden. I mean, when those guys went on the field, they made their plays. And so I think it's very comforting for us as a staff to know that we have 6 really quality receivers that can play at a high level. The moment never felt too big for any of them. I love kind of having cross-train Ryan Niblett because of the fact that he can do things out of the backfield and at receiver. And so it gives us a lot of versatility that way to still pour into our 21 package stuff, but also, have the ability to play in 11 and to do both those things. So, again, as we continue to grow throughout the season, I think time will tell. But going into week 2, I think the biggest thing I got out of it was just confidence in all of those guys that when they're on the field, they're gonna play well.
It's interesting that Ryan Niblett point that he made there. I thought, at one point, and this is, I believe, actually was ultimately a vision for. And a goal for Tom Herman's offense. Remember, Tom Herman had the H position, and it actually stood for hybrid. He never used it as a hybrid, but that's what when he brought in Jake Smith and Jordan Whittington and Devin Duvernay, that's what they played, that H position. It was supposed to be a hybrid between a running back and a wide receiver, and turn your offense multiple, allow you, to take on hybrid forms, to go from 21 personnel and just shift that guy out. Shift them on out to the wide receiver in the slot, and then you become 11 personnel. He literally just said that. And I always thought, oh man, that's a brilliant idea. It's probably, better, sometimes easier in theory than in practice, but Texas has the athletes to do that. To have, you guys, what have I always said last 5 years? Positionless football is the future of football. Now, you have to major in it like Shano does, or like Dan Quinn does on defense in the NFL, but you should have some elements of it in your offense. If not, you're not progressive. And sorry, buzzword, versatility, he's starting to understand it, right? More and more. You're starting to hear about it on offense now. You're starting to hear about it on defense now. It's just evolution. I love that Sark's evolving like that. He's real time. This next cut actually is another example of him evolving real time and turning into a championship coach. last year, what was one of our biggest complaints about Sark early on in the season? He kept saying, yeah, you know what? The Rice and Wyoming and U of H, oh, they showed us a look. All right, they showed us a look in the game that we had not seen on film. They showed us. That's why we started slow. That's why we had some issues. And as a coach, that's obviously it's understandable. And by the way, that's a compliment. Teams breaking tendency going up against you because teams break tendency for really big games usually. And they were breaking tendency against Texas, mostly throwing out the 3 high safety defense, which we talked about ad nauseum last year was going to be something a team's used against Texas because it had really good results countering Sark's scheme. Sark figured out an antidote for it, and Texas won the Big 12 title, even though they faced a 3 high probably half the damn schedule last year, which is why they used it because they know it so damn well. They used it in the Colorado State game. They actually played 3 high, I think. So it comes full circle. If you can't beat them, you join them. That's football in a nutshell too. But Sark now in this cut, he's talking about how now he's anticipating. He's evolving real time. He's anticipating teams giving him looks and presentations in the game, tendencies in the game that they had not yet established on film. Here's Steve Sarkisian.
Yeah, it's pretty safe to say. I'm sure, like us, they have probably spent a little bit more time on us in preparation, maybe during the off season, and have studied some different things and would like to try to attack us in all 3 phases, maybe differently. And generally speaking, you go play that first game and you have a game plan for that first game, and then they kind of had that second game plan waiting for us. And so it's going to be critical for us to identify kind of what they're trying to do. I think this game more than ever is when we could probably really get some of the usage out of the tablets on the sidelines and some of the video that we get to see. So maybe we can make those adjustments a little quicker than when you're trying to just to talk it through. But they've got great coaches. It's a really good staff. Sharon Moore's done it. He's been there and he knows the Michigan way. I know Wink, like I said, I've known Wink for 20 years now, and he's an excellent defensive coordinator. So they're going to have a good plan. They're very good on special teams. And so, and they got good players. And so the point is when 2 good teams meet up, it's how do you attack one another in a way that whatever you're trying to do doesn't have holes in it, right? And that you don't get exposed anywhere until you can try to really start to, attack what's going on the field. And so, hey, we know we're going to get some new stuff, and that's why we use the adage here, trust our training. And if we can trust our training and execute early on, then we can make the proper adjustments.
Yeah, and he's right. Don Week Martindale, I'm sure, will bring something that Texas hadn't seen on film. You got to break tendency in big games. You have to. And Sark, I'm glad he's admitting it, that they do extra prep for these games. He won't let you know how much, but in the offseason, they circle big games, and then you start doing your prep in the offseason when you got a little bit more time to dive into those teams. And since every coach does that, well, that means they're going to be thoroughly and intimately knowledgeable about your trends and about your weaknesses, your tendencies. So you got to use that against them because they're building a game plan based on your tendencies. So you break tendency so that their game plan, obviously is not effective. So that's why breaking tendency in big games is so important. Glad Sark's, evolving as a coach. He understands, hey, teams, they're going to do it to you because you're a big game. You're everybody's big game. So you might as well just expect to see against Michigan, what haven't they put on film? The option, they're probably going to run the option with Orgy. Why wouldn't he? The defense, I think the defense will go with light boxes against Texas. If I got the 2 best D tackles in the country, which Texas had last year, Texas had the best rush defense in the country versus when they deployed a light box, fewer defenders than the offense had blockers. The reason they could do that is because they had the best D tackle duo in the country. You needed 3, hell, maybe even 4 offensive linemen to block 2 D tackles for Texas, Sweat and Murphy. Therefore, the numbers advantage always flipped in Texas' favor. I think they'll use that against Texas, and then you can devote more defenders to the passing game, which they gonna need to defend all those weapons Texas has. So talk about playing the young guys. Texas played a lot of young guys versus Colorado State. I'm not sure how many young guys are gonna play versus Michigan. It's a big game in the big house. Here's Sark talking about playing some of the younger players on that roster.
I'd love to. I think that a couple things that I saw out of our younger players. I think we played 13 true freshmen this past week, and they all kind of showed their physical attributes of what we thought about them: the size, the speed, the athleticism, the willingness to be physical. Those were all definitely evident. And then we saw playmaking ability. Obviously it's easy to point to a Ryan Wingo or a Jarrett Gibson as some of the things that they did offensively, but I even go all the way to Wardell Mack with the interception at the end. We're continually trying to recruit, playmakers to go along with the skill set and a character piece that adds into it all. So I don't think any of them did anything to say we can't put them in the game. We just got to continue to try to develop them and to grow them and to keep building their confidence and to keep building our trust in them.
Yeah, Texas playing a lot of young guys. Sark also was asked about the environment. It's going to be, extremely hostile. They're defending champions. It's the big house. They got a great football tradition, and they're a blue blood. So the crowd's going to be hype, and Texas is coming to town. And Sark was asked about playing in that hostile environment. It shouldn't be foreign to Texas. They just went to Tuscaloosa last season and beat Alabama, and that's a pretty hostile environment too. But here's Sark when he was discussing his own experience as a player, but also now as a coach, what he embraces about being that road team. Here's Sark.
Actually, my OMG moment came as a player. I was a player at BYU, and we were pretty good. I think we might have been 2-0, and we had beaten A&M in week 1. We had, I think, beaten like Arkansas State or somebody in week 2, and we went to Washington, and we went into Husky Stadium, and it was so loud that I just hadn't been in an environment that was loud like that. I ended up getting sacked, I think 7 or 8 times. We got beat, and that was our only loss that year. We went 14-1. But in that moment, it's there's another level in your mind. You go to, wow, there's another level of what opposing stadiums can feel like and be like. Especially when there's some hatred towards the opponent when you walk in for whatever reason. People can generate hate in a lot of different ways. And so for me, now I've learned to relish those opportunities. There's something that I kind of relish being the villain. I kind of like going in there thinking, man, there's 100 versus 120,000, and we're the villain, and it's okay being the villain, and how do we create that that deafening silence, and how do we go about that? And that comes about by our style of play, that comes about by our execution, that comes about by sticking together, playing as one. But I love those opportunities as much as I love playing at home. I like that too, because I think you find out a lot about yourself and a lot about your team.
That's Sark saying, he's embracing being the villain, relishing that role. Yeah, with Texas, I mean, most people are watching that Texas-Michigan game hoping Texas will lose. Not a lot of people are rooting for Texas. People hate watch Texas. You got to get used to that, especially if you want to go on the road. In the Icy Whites, us against the world. I'm glad Sark has got the guy's mindset ready for that.
I do think
that's what it's going to be like.
This is one of those games where a lot of people are going to be hoping that both teams can lose. This is one of those games.
That's true. Michigan is all. You're right.
Michigan is not very well liked right now either.
Yes, that's a very, very good point. I don't know which one of them nationally probably is more hated and gets more hate, but you're right. There'll be a lot of hate watching.
The Connor Stallions thing kind of knocked Michigan down a few pegs.
No, you're right. No, Michigan's always kind of had that. I mean, Tom Brady even has that, and he's one of the great Michigan alum. Like, Michigan's always had that kind of air about them, and so is Texas. So you're right. A lot of people around the nation, everybody will be watching, but most will be hate watching. That's okay. All right. They hate us because they ain't us, I believe is what the young folks say. All right, we come back, and we'll get into the topic for the Big Fat Poll today. Also, your musically themed day of the week right here on the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis. I'm Lifetime Longhorn Rod Davis coming back on the horn.
Back here on the Rodcast on a Friday, making it a 512 Friday where I'll play you local music. You can go check out around town this weekend. This is Ruthie Kraft. She is playing Saturday at Empire Control Room and Garage, doing an album release there at Empire for Ruthie Kraft on Saturday. Let's get to the big fat poll of the day. Text line's open, 512-447-3776, and we're going to get this posted up on X at The Horn ATX.
Patrick's big fat poll of the day on The Horn.
All right, so a lot of the stuff you hear from Michigan and Michigan commentators is that the way that Texas does not win this game is that they are held and that their offense basically becomes stagnant and is not able to score on this empowering, this very good Michigan defense. So the poll of the day is, how many points will Texas score against Michigan? We know there's probably a number in the 20s that pretty much guarantees you'll win. You feel really, I won't get guarantees, but really, really feel confident somewhere in the 20s, a high 20s, that if you get to around 28, you feel pretty good that your defense will not allow that many points back. You never know. There could be things that this offense kind of didn't show in game one that makes them a lot more powerful than they looked in game one. But if not, does Texas be able to do they get those points, or does Texas get shut down, or does Texas just light it up and like it's no problem and has too many weapons? They go on a run and it gets out of hand at some point. So we'll make it real easy. On X, we'll have those polls 0 to 10, 10 to 20, 20 to 30, and 30 plus.
Yeah, I mean, I could see them scoring 30 plus. I really could. They could. They could. That those runs I talk about, Sark's offenses, they're built on these runs. And if Texas is able to score, a couple of times before they hit a run on Michigan somewhere late in the game, maybe the dam breaks, I can see them scoring 30. I'll give Michigan defense the benefit of the doubt. They got multiple NFL players on their defense. They got, an NFL caliber defensive coordinator, and they're playing at home. But the same thing was true for Alabama. Multiple NFL players on their defense. Nick Saban's the GOAT, maybe the greatest defensive mind in history of college football. And, Texas was able to go in there and score a lot of points and pull away from Alabama and win by double digits in Tuscaloosa. So I'm not saying they're going to do that to Michigan, but that Alabama team is better than this Michigan team. I think we all.
I mean, all around, definitely.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But even on defense, I'm not saying on defense they are, but on defense they still had first round NFL players.
They did.
So if they can do that to Alabama and Nick Saban and Tuscaloosa, they certainly can do that to Michigan. So it's possible. I have them. I think that defense is legit. I think they'll be ready to roll. I think they got a wake-up call probably in week one from Fresno State, secondary-wise, in terms of pass coverage, that, hey, man, y'all better be buttoned up. I think they went out there a little cocky and arrogant. This is Fresno State. Fresno State always got a little speed. They can chunk it a little bit. And they picked on Will Johnson. I think Will Johnson thought he'd have a quiet day. You a shut down corner, you figure, nobody's going to test me. And they went after him. They threw him in like 8 times. He was working out there. And I don't think he expected it. And I think he understands, all right, you know what? I gotta focus on every play. Just because I got a reputation as the best corner doesn't mean I can, come out there and be distracted. And I think he was a little distracted in that game. So I think the defense will be ready to roll. I got Texas scoring, like around 27, maybe 27 points. I'll give him, because I think he started a little slow. I think he may start a little slow.
Yeah, I think that 20 to 30 is pretty safe. It's pretty safe bet. I think that's probably what's going to win the poll, is 20 to 30. But I'm curious what people think. And if you want to drop in the comments on X, and you can drop it on the text line 512-447-3776. Give us your final score predictions. I'd love to see what you guys final score believe, because you could believe Texas puts up 22 and is in that 20 to 30 and still loses the game. You could believe that.
Yeah.
So let us know what your final score prediction is as well there on the text line and on X. Love to see what you guys are thinking of how bad or how good this game will be for Texas tomorrow. Would love to see that as well.
Yeah, but Michigan, I mean, they're just not built to score a lot of points either.
They're not.
So if you score, man, I say if you get to 20, if you get to 27, honestly, probably even 24, right around there, I think for Texas, you could that could be enough to win the game, honestly. I think 24-27. I don't even think you need 30 to beat Michigan because that's not the kind of style of football they want to play. They don't.
No, that's
they
not.
scored 30 versus Fresno State. They had a non-offensive touchdown too, and so they want to play bully ball, slow the game down, limit possessions. I mean, this game's gonna go relatively quick. Just because Michigan's gonna slow it down. They're not gonna throw the football a lot. It's going to go relatively quick, which is not a great thing for Texas because Texas wants more possessions. More possessions they have, the more explosive. The more possessions they have, the more points they're going to score. That's also going to affect what you're talking about is the limited possessions they're going to have.
Yeah, they may not get the ball as much.
Slow. They might not get the ball as much.
But
I'm saying they may score points, but they may not get the ball as much.
Now, we also throw in, though, you get some turnovers on very inexperienced quarterbacks.
I agree.
Can you you push in there and get some turnovers? I think this is a game where if you ever want to see Anthony Hill get a turnover and get an interception with how much they're going to go to Loveland, I think they could be throwing it over there. And if you put Anthony Hill out there at some point, maybe he gets one. But I'll say that is a big point too, is if they get some turnovers, all of a sudden those points can go up real quick as well.
Turnovers will change the entire complexion of this matchup. Like if one team is, careless with the football, all this analysis that we're talking about, it goes right out the window because that will change the entire game. If Michigan is an opportunistic defense. Remember last year they were top 5 in the country in turnover margin, in takeaways, in interceptions. They got 2 of them versus Fresno State. If Texas turns the football over versus Michigan, then you guys know. I mean, think about the 2 games they lost last year. Turnovers were big. Oklahoma, a lot of turnovers early, put you in a hole, had to battle back. Almost did, but obviously came up short. And then versus Washington, critical turnovers in the third quarter, 2 fumbles. That pretty much put that game. It didn't put it out of reach, but once again, it put you a little bit behind, and you came up short just barely. You have 1 fumble instead of 2, you probably win that game.
Yeah, sure.
Versus Washington. Yeah, so no, I'm with you. Turnovers will be big. All right, good stuff there for the topic for the Big Fat Poll today. We come back, we'll get into that topic because we'll talk a little Texas, Michigan. We'll also get into Cowboys and their weekend matchup. We'll talk about the Texans kicking off their NFL season. We'll also dive back into last night's thrilling game, the big victory for the Chiefs over the Ravens, and Xavier Worthy's performance. Lots to get into right here on the Rodcast on a 512 Friday edition of the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis and Lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers coming back on the horn. Hey, what's up, folks? Lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers here. Let me tell you about my friend, Dr. Greg Eckert, because he is the best dentist in Austin. Anytime someone asks me if I have a recommendation for a good dentist, I say, no, I don't know a good dentist. I know a great dentist, the best dentist in Austin. I owe him a huge debt of gratitude. Initially went to Dr. Eckert for a cleaning, just a routine checkup. And while I was there for that routine checkup, they actually found, because they're so thorough, that my wisdom teeth were growing in sideways. Then I was on the verge of essentially a disastrous situation, but he and his team acted quickly, made sure I was comfortable and knowledgeable, informed about the process, got the procedure scheduled, and got everything done. I was back at work within a couple of days, and thanks to Dr. Eckert and his team, my dental health and dental hygiene have never been better, and they can do the same for you. Now, it doesn't, hopefully for you, it's not as serious as having all your wisdom teeth extracted. Hopefully it's something pretty routine and like a cleaning or a checkup, but no matter what it is, general dentistry, teeth whitening, dentures, porcelain crowns, veneers, dental implants, full mouth reconstruction, even root canal therapy, whatever it takes to ensure that you're getting the best quality dental care available. That's what Dr. Eckert and his team are all about. They're also all about being on the cutting edge of the technological advances in general dentistry. And because of that, right now, they're able to give you a brand new smile in just one day. That's right, folks. Permanently secured to your dental implants. No time spent without teeth. You'll get temporary fixtures first until they complete your permanent smile. And then you'll smile again with confidence and eat freely without pain or discomfort. It is a lifelike, permanent solution. So if you've been told your teeth need to be replaced, don't freak out. Don't stress out about it. Call Dr. Eckert. That's what you need to do. It's a revolutionary alternative to dentures, and it's a complimentary consultation, which means you got nothing to lose but so much to gain, because a confident smile can truly change your life. And Dr. Eckert knows that. He wants to change your life for the better. So what are you waiting for? Give him a call. 512-345-3166. 512-345-3166, or visit dreckert.com, drueckert.com. And if you tell them that you heard it on the horn, or that you're a horn listener, you'll get free Zoom whitening, because Dr. Eckert's always taking care of his people. So go check it out, dreckert.com, drueckert.com. Welcome back to the Rodcast. It is a 512 Friday edition of the Rodcast. That's when the Idealionaire, my man Patrick Davis, he plays jams from local bands and artists, very talented human beings that you have a chance to catch live right here in the ATX. Who's jamming right now, Patrick?
This is the Selfless Lovers, and they're playing tonight at the 04 Center.
Oh, I like that. The Selfless Lovers. It's nice. I like that. It's pretty good. You want to be a selfless lover. I mean, should be a goal for everybody. Try to strive. You don't want to be a selfish lover. It's bad. It's terrible.
That band's
good.
no good at all.
That is it still might be a good band name. I'm just saying to what things to strive for. That's definitely not one of those things. All right. Also, my man Patrick hooks us up with the topic for the big fat poll of the day, which we'll make sure we get posted at the Horn ATX. Patrick, give the folks the topic for the big fat poll of the day.
Big fat poll of the day today. How many points will Texas score against Michigan? And then we'd love to hear your final score predictions there on X at the Horn ATX and on the text line 512-447-3776.
Yeah, definitely 20 to 30 is going to be the most popular one. But I would, like I said, I would not be surprised if Texas scores 30 against Michigan. It's possible they could. I'm going to give Michigan's defense the benefit of the doubt that they can hold them under 30. But that Texas, if Sark has the right game plan, which a lot of times early in big games like this, he's got something dialed up, something up his sleeve. And if they can get some turnovers, the turnover sword, Texcalibur. If we see Texcalibur a few times, that also will help Texas. That'll be big. And we haven't talked about special teams, but you got a big return in the Colorado State game. Matthew Gold is pretty dangerous in the kickoff return game. That may be something too you can look at potentially. So a lot of ways. This is the thing. Texas has a lot of ways they can score. Michigan doesn't have a lot of ways. Michigan's just run the ball, and maybe they can give themselves some favorable field position with defense and special teams. Like, that's really their blueprint to score. Texas, maybe the running game for Texas is working. We don't think it's going to work. Well, I don't think it's going to work very well versus Michigan, but it could. If that's the case, that's how you can move the football. We know Texas has the short, intermediate, and they didn't show it off last week, but they got the vertical passing game too. That's a way for them to move the football, and they do it really well. Their special teams for Texas is really good, so you get hidden yardage via special teams. So I think that's why I'm feeling more confident in this game for Texas, that more avenues, more paths to victory for Texas. But the Michigan way, I mean, at least this brand of football has been extremely effective. That's why they're defeating national champions, and it's against the grain because you don't have a lot of examples of teams that you prepare for that play this kind of football. So you don't even know if you're ready for it until you go up against it. Like Texas doesn't know. It's the last time, even Sark said the last time they played up against an offense like this was Stanford. But what was PK was Stanford for PK when he was in the Pac-12. And that was a hardball offense. It was just David Shaw was running the offense, but that was a hardball brand of football.
Yeah.
In the Big 12, who do you see that plays that? Remember when you played Iowa State like 2-3 years ago during the Brock Purdy years where they had Brees Hall and they had those Charlie Kohler and those 3 tight ends that they were running. You're running 13 personnel. Maybe some of that, but they threw the ball a lot more. Those were receiving targets down the field. But Colston Loveland is a big receiving target as a tight end, and they're very diverse formationally at the time. So that could, but they ran some power football because they had Brees Hall in the backfield. So maybe that K-State, a little bit of K-State maybe earlier on, but you don't play a lot of teams that do what Michigan does, and Michigan does it really, really well. So that is the matchup thing is also what's kind of scary, because the styles there's such a contrasting styles for both of these teams.
Yeah.
What if your team just doesn't match up well? It happens in fights, right? It's like, now they're very different, and you start thinking, well, they're very different styles. I think one style is just going to overwhelm the other. And that's what people are thinking right now for Texas. The Texas style is going to overwhelm Michigan. The dam will break, boom, they'll score a lot of points. And that could easily happen. That could. But also it could happen where the opposite is true, and their style just makes Texas clunky and disrupts Texas, and it really for Texas it counters their style really well and limits their possessions, and they get some batted passes, and Texas is in that environment, so they have some penalties and get behind the chain, so it could happen that way too. So to give Michigan fans a bit of doubt, I don't think it's. That's why I'm not going to be arrogant about it. I am confident, but I don't want to be arrogant and say, "Oh, they're going to score 30 plus." They could.
No, and I think that, if you just look at intangible things that Texas has over Michigan, we know Texas is the much faster team because that's what Sark is built. Their team is built on speed, but Michigan is built to be the tougher team of anybody they play, and we don't know if Michigan's that much tougher than Texas. They're probably a tougher team, but are they that much that they have that advantage that far that their defensive line can push around Texas O-line and their O-line can push around Texas D-line? Are they that much tougher in the trenches, or is that a little bit more evenly matched? And so then Texas has a big advantage on speed. And then on this being rough and tough and pushing each other around, if, even if they're winning it, but only by a little bit, that swings it back to Texas because you just have that other factor in it.
Yeah. No, you're right about that. That's it. That's it. I think Texas checks a lot of boxes in terms of the advantages in this game. Speed, I'm with you, is definitely one of them. And Texas has been building this thing. Texas, when you can go up against Alabama and choke the life out of Alabama, and essentially at the end of that game be able to pull away from them, then you can do it to this Michigan squad too. So that's why I think some people are just thinking that may happen to Michigan, kind of what happened to Alabama. And yeah, I could, like I said, I will give Texas a lot of credit that it's very possible that Sark has a game plan dialed up perfectly for this Michigan squad, and it just, they really just at one point too much speed, and they separate and pull away in the second half and score 30. They could, but like I said, I think they're gonna be right under 30. I think they will. I think they'll win by double digits. I got them at 27-13 right now in my mind. Yeah.
No.
So that's I still think the spread's 7.5. So that's still, I don't know if that's a comfortable margin because they could pull away late, but double digits, I feel like that to me is respectful to Michigan. Because some people say they're gonna blow Michigan out. I was like, man, I don't know if I want to get into the blow them out, like beat them by 3 touchdowns kind of thing. Like, I don't know.
No, because we both know it's possible to have that, but odds would tell you that
it could be 31-10. That's 3 touchdowns.
Odds would tell you that Texas is not going to score in every possession. They're probably not going to have a ton of possessions. So if you say they're not going to score in everyone, it's just hard to put up, 40-something points when you don't get the ball that many times because Michigan just keeps running the ball. And they're going to run the ball probably into the third quarter, even if they're down by 3 touchdowns. I don't think they're going to turn to I think they're just going to have to keep running the football.
They got to run it so they don't get down by a lot too. Just just limit the possessions and shrink the game is what they're gonna be trying to do.
Yeah, and that's kind of where that score prediction shrinks a little bit. If you're going back and forth and you're both just chunking it downfield, I'll take Texas every day to put up 40 points because they're getting every opportunity to go back down, and the more opportunities, the more points they're going to score. I just don't know how many opportunities you get, especially in that first half. If Michigan is just trying to run the ball and they're able to move you enough to get 4 yards of carry and just keep moving the chains. And then eventually you get a stop on there, you get a penalty or something like that, and you get a stop and they get a field goal or they get nothing, have to punt it. But that's 8 minutes off the clock.
If Michigan can run the ball, then all bets are off.
Yeah.
If they can run the ball, then this is going to be a slobber knocker of a game. It's going to come down to the fourth quarter and a game-winning drive or a game-winning field goal or a defensive goal line stand if they can run the ball.
Yeah,
that's just because if they can do that, then Texas is going to it's going to be a long day.
It is. I'll say this on the text line so far: no one's picked Michigan, which normally in these big games we get at least a couple people. Like our man Chan is usually a little bit more scary. He says he's still nervous, but he's still got a 27-21. So, he's
got him very close. Got a close game there, 27-21. Yeah, I think. Like I said, that's respect. I think some people have respect for Michigan. Some people have no respect for Michigan.
That's true.
Man, they're going to blow them out. Michigan looks terrible. And they did. They looked bad. But, remember this. Do you remember how you felt, Longhorn fans, after the Rice game last year, going into the Bama game about the offensive line? Do you remember that? Do you remember after the Rice game watching the offensive line who couldn't block against Rice at times? You're like, man, I don't know how the hell they're going to block Alabama if they're struggling against Rice a little bit. And what did Sark say? He said, they gave us some looks that we weren't prepared for. They gave us some looks up front that we were unfamiliar with. That kind of goes back to what we talked about earlier and played that audio. And then we learned, they were ready for the Bama looks because they've been preparing for Bama for like 2-3 months before that.
Yeah.
And Rice got no love. They probably prepared for Rice for 2 days. They put the Rice game playing in. And the guys, weren't necessarily, prepared, and they got caught, I think, by surprise with some of the looks and the pressure packages. And I remember a lot of Longhorn fans were not confident going into that Bama game because of that, and then come out and then push Bama around a little bit.
Yeah. But I mean, are you using that for the example of what Michigan could do to Texas?
Yes. Yes, I am. I'm saying it's exactly what I'm saying. I'm saying it's exactly what I'm saying. I'm saying, they don't have a lot of proven commodities. Now, Texas had experienced offensive line at the time, right? They returned a lot of starters. They returned all their starters. They don't. That was a brand new offensive line. They had lost everybody and everybody on offense, starting running back, starting quarterback. So I think their leap of improvement from week 1 to week 2 could be drastic. And, maybe they weren't preparing for Fresno State either.
Yeah.
Maybe all they've been preparing for is Texas. So maybe, and that happened to Texas.
It's a first-year head coach too. So
yeah.
You say that it makes mistakes somewhere in there, but
yeah. I got to go back and look at that because I remember that conversation. I remember I was like, something tells me that, and I remember they'll be ready for the Bama game. They just weren't ready for the Rice game, but they'll be ready for the Bama game. And I feel like some of that with Michigan, just run blocking wise, I still think they can't throw the football downfield. That's real. But the run blocking thing, I think we may have a distorted perception of that Michigan run game after week 1.
Yeah,
because we all were like, Donovan, that looks terrible, and he didn't look good at all. But now people are like, oh, he's a scrub. I'm like, well, I don't know if he's a scrub. He is on the cover of the video game. I think he's got pride too, right? It's going to be a bounce back factor with that. So that's why I think I'll give him some credit. Maybe they'll be able to move the ball, running the football a little bit. I still think Texas will win their fair share, but I don't know, being able to stalemate that running game, that's going to be tough to stalemate it. Where they get nothing at all out of the running game.
Yeah, it'll be very tough.
I think Texas. I think it's going to be early on. It's going to be a good game. I got Texas pulling away, and I think a lot of Vegas obviously feels the same way about Texas in that regard. All right, let's get first to the Horn headlines here. Then we'll come back and talk Cowboys and Texans. Let's get updated. Let's get educated, and let's get informed. First with all the big stories of the day with Patrick Davis and the Horn headlines.
All right, your Horn headlines brought to you by Top Gun Rentals and Lawn Equipment. In the MLB, the Astros lost the last game of their series 1-0 to the Reds yesterday, getting swept and knocking them to 5-5 in their last 10 games. Hunter Brown had a quality start, pitching 6 scoreless innings, striking out 6, but the offense could only muster 4 hits. The Astros now return home to take on the Diamondbacks, sending Framber Valdez to the mound tonight. The Rangers won the first game of their series with the Angels 3-1 last night, with Adolis Garcia's first inning 3-run homer powering the team to victory. Cody Bradford pitched 6 innings, only giving up 1 run in one of his best outings since returning from injury. And the win is the 3rd straight for the Rangers and the 8th in the last 10 games. Gerson Garabito gets a start for the Rangers tonight after being called up from the minors earlier this week. And in the NFL, the Chiefs pulled off a 27-20 win over the Ravens in the season kickoff last night after a game-tying touchdown was reversed in the final seconds due to Isaiah Likely's toes landing just out of bounds. Xavier Worthy made the most of his opportunity, scoring 2 touchdowns on 3 touches with 68 yards of total offense. Tonight, the Packers take on the Eagles in Sao Paulo, Brazil, as the rest of the league begins on Sunday with the Texans starting their season in Indianapolis against the Colts and Dallas traveling to Cleveland to face the Browns. And that's your Horn headlines.
All right. Thank you, Patrick, for the Horn headlines. We appreciate those. All right. Let's get to some discussion about the Cowboys and the Texans. We'll start with the Texans and why that line, I think last time I looked at it, it was Texans actually favored by 3 over the Colts. Here's something that concerns me about the Texans and that Colts matchup, though. Houston ranked 6th last season in rushing yards allowed per game. They were really good there. I think just 96 yards allowed per game on the ground. In their 2 games against Indy, though, they allowed an average of 176 rushing yards. And Anthony Richardson, who is a dynamic freak of an athlete, with Jonathan Taylor in the backfield, that can end up being a problem potentially for the Texans, defending that combination, the power running game element with Jonathan Taylor. And by the way, he's explosive. I mean, he can score from damn near anywhere on the field. And then also defending the dual threat element of Anthony Richardson. He's not a very efficient quarterback as a passer just yet, but his ability to extend plays and then, force you to defend 3 different plays in one, as I always talk about, the scramble drill and the scramble after the initial play. That's going to pose problems, all types of problems for a defense. So do you put a spy on him? You got to account for his running ability as an extra man, a +1, as they call it, on every down. So essentially, he's going 11 on 12 when you got a player like that. Same thing you have to deal with Lamar Jackson. So that concerns me, but the Colts have not won a season opener since 2013. That's crazy. It's the longest active winless streak in week 1 in the league. I don't know what's going on there. But the Colts, they can't seem to get it together early on in week 1. So I think that's also why you see that line for the Texans, moving, approaching, the 3.5 mark potentially on some of those books. Even though, the Colts, and I like AD Mitchell, I think their wide receiving core is improved. But I think I'll take the Texans' much improved defense with Danielle Hunter being added to the mix. They're moving around some pieces in the back end. Jalen Petrie at that nickel. I like that too, going up against a player like Anthony Richardson. I like Jalen Petrie and his instincts being close to the line of scrimmage, being able to blitz, or maybe he could be your spy at times. So that's another big part of it. And of course, I can't wait to see the new look offense for the Texans. Are they going to play more 11 personnel where they put all 3 of those receivers on the field, Tank Dell, Nico Collins, and Stephon Diggs on the field at one time? Because that, I believe, was the purpose of bringing them in, and so that you could just really just threaten teams with 3 potential number 1 caliber receivers. Nico Collins is that now, Stephon Diggs is that now, and Tank Dell might be the go-to guy. If you go look at the stats and the metrics for CJ Stroud, he likes him that much. He kind of represents that guy in the red zone and on third downs that CJ Stroud looks to and looks for. So he may be the favorite, even though Nico Collins and Stephon Diggs are probably going to get more of the target share between those guys.
Yeah, I mean,
offense.
I'll be watching specifically Joe Mixon in this running offense that I still really don't have any belief that this running offense is going to – I mean, and again, they were bland in the preseason, but Bobby Slowick's running offense didn't really work last year. Nope. The preseason gave you zero hope that it was going to work this year. So you're hoping that something changes between that and regular season, because no one's been able to really get it going in that offense running-wise. So that'll be a big one. Is if Joe Mixon can get it going, if that offense starts to look a little bit better, especially if you're able to get a second running back to actually get a few yards and average a little bit more than 3 to 4 yards a carry, that would really show you a lot more confidence as the season goes on, to where you play some teams with a little bit better defenses that are going to bring a little bit more pressure for CJ Stroud, a little bit more help in the secondary, that you will be able to have a somewhat balanced attack and be able to run the ball. That's a big one. And it's not like Indy is the best defense, the best defensive line, any of that. So you should be able to try and impose your will a little bit more running the ball. But that'll be a big one watching, because if you add that in with everything you just mentioned on that offense, it becomes really, really hard to stop them. And that's where, when you have a game like Indy, where it's going to be a bit more of a shootout of 2 offenses trying to get downfield a lot, that it gives a strong edge to the Texans.
Yeah, the Texans, they've had a bottom 5 rushing attack basically over the last 5 years. At least the theory is that with all these weapons, you put them out there on the field more, you put your 3 top wide receivers out there, you got Dalton Schultz in the passing game, and that teams now have to respect your passing game. They have to respect CJ Stroud's ability to stretch the field, which we talked about, that he's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL at throwing past the sticks with the vertical passing game and being efficient with it. That if they don't defend that and they decide they're going to allocate resources to stop the run, then you'll get one-on-ones with Tank Dell, Stephon Diggs, or Nico Collins, and those guys will eat all day, every day. But if you want to stop those guys, you'll probably be dropping back safeties, and you're probably trying to win the numbers game in the passing game, or at least with your pass defense, therefore giving you favorable numbers in the box. And so Joe Mixon, who's ever running the football for Texans, they should get favorable looks in the box. And the offensive line, which was the most injury riddled offensive line in the NFL over the last 20 years. They haven't there hasn't been an offensive line with as many injuries as the Texans had in the NFL since 2001. And that's when they started tracking it, by the way. So before that, we could be talking about the most injury riddled offensive line in the last 30, 40 years. We just don't know. They weren't tracking it back then. So that's how bad it was. So the combination of improved offensive line play, or at least a healthy offensive line, with the schematic adjustment of defenses who have to defend now all those weapons in the passing game, that should lead to a better running game, just organically, with those two elements now for the Texans being improved or have being changed, because you didn't have that last year. Last year you had injuries on the line and you had defenses that were they didn't trust, or at least they didn't have a reason to fear your passing game, and there was no reason for them to fear it. Now they fear it.
Yeah, and I
you hope
think
that that'll
your basic concept going up, and I know later in the season you knew more of what Bobby Sloak was doing, but if you see anybody coming from that McShanahan tree, you're going to say they're going to run the football. He came from San Francisco. They're going to run the football, and then they couldn't. But they kept trying, and Singletary had an okay year, but they really just couldn't run the ball well. So that's a huge one to watch, because this is a game where, and also on the road, you like to run the football, silence the crowd if you can get it going a little bit. All those pieces you love to be able to do. So you just get to see a lot of that. But I'm with you too. Watching that defense against Anthony Richardson in a league where there's more and more mobile quarterbacks. You have pass rush that you've added. You've added a lot of pieces, but are they going to be able to pass rush without overcommitting and allowing explosive plays by the quarterback?
Yep, exactly. And I'll say this too about that Indy defense. They play a lot of cover three. No defense actually plays more cover three than Gus Bradley's Colts. Is at a 55% rate just playing cover three. If you go look at the stats from last year, the best quarterback versus cover three was CJ Stroud. Actually, he was great. That's why we anticipate this year he's going to see, because cover three means single high. You're in man coverage, or you're in obviously cover three when you have single high. So they're in cover three a lot, which is they're putting an extra guy down toward the box. And you do that when you have any single high. You can do it with man, but in cover three, that guy's going to be down near the box. And that was obviously how they played the Texans, stopping the run, to Patrick's point, probably with the reputation of the McShanahan clan. And they were going to have a really good running game. And why would I devote two safeties to defend a rookie quarterback? He's got to earn that right. Well, now CJ Stroud has earned that right. So I wonder if they'll still play a lot of cover three against him, even though he just eviscerated it last season. And the wide receiver three, like the third best wide receiver in yards per route run versus cover three last year, Nico Collins, because CJ Stroud is so good identifying and being able to, like I said, pick apart cover three. So stands to reason that he'd be really good at it too. So if I'm the Texans, this matchup, you're hoping that the Colts come out and do what they do, because if they come out and play a lot of cover three, which they do more than any team in the league, that's a good sign for CJ Stroud and for Nico Collins. So there you go, fantasy football nerds. You can take that. That's a good stat for you. And also getting to the Cowboys, and we'll get to them when we get to into Rod's rant. We'll get to that next segment, but we'll get into their matchup versus the Browns. There's also a conceptual trend or a tendency of the Browns that I think the Cowboys can take advantage of. So we'll get into that too when we break down that matchup coming up next segment. So we'll get to the break, and we'll get to some more NFL news, notes, and nuggets. We'll also hit some of the other big games of the weekend across the NFL slate, and get to some college football discussion. Of course, the biggest game of the college football weekend involves the Texas Longhorns facing the Michigan Wolverines. We'll break that matchup down a little bit too on the other side in Rod's rant. All that and more right here on the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis. I'm lifetime Longhorn. Rod Davis coming back on the Horn. All right, welcome back to the Rodcast. Time to get into a little football discussion. I want to talk about the Cowboys. We got into the Texans and their matchup coming up this weekend with the Indianapolis Colts. Let's talk about the Cowboys. They're going to be facing the Browns. For the Cowboys, it's a little strange to be outside of the NFC to start their season. That's a little rare for them. And there's a lot of storylines here, but this is something I'll pay attention to because I'm not sure the Cowboys' running game is going to be able to move the football against the Browns. That Browns defense, I mean, that's arguably the best defense in the league. It was one of the top 3 best defenses in the league last season. That's a really good defense, and their defensive front is pretty damn stout. And the Cowboys' running back room, as we know, is one of the weakest running back rooms in the NFL. And I like the offensive line, but I'm still not sure if they got enough playmakers, game breakers in the backfield with Zeke and Rico Dowdle. So my assumption is the Cowboys will largely be, say, one-dimensional. I think they'll have to throw the football a ton. They'll have to lean heavily on Dak, and that connection with CD and Jake Ferguson's going to be a big part of it, obviously. And I think the Cowboys, with that passing and the Tex Coast offense now with Dak Prescott, they can make plays against the Browns defense because the Browns play a lot of man coverage. As a matter of fact, the Browns played man coverage on like 37% of their snaps last year. That's what they do. That was a top 5 rate in the NFL. They're really good at it. So they play a lot of man coverage, but Dak will rip apart man coverage. He and CeeDee Lamb are great on teams that are heavy man coverage team. So that would be their saving grace. The matchup gives me a little, have some pause as a quasi Cowboys fan, because I think, like I said, it's going to be tough sledding trying to run the football against that group. But like I said, the Browns, if they hold true to their tendency, which is to play a lot of man, I think the Cowboys got a good chance because nobody really can cover CD man to man in the league. There's some wide receivers they just really can't be defended that way for a long time, and he's one of those guys. Now if they put a safety over the top of CD and decide to take him away, then I think, and just double team CD, which they won't. I don't think they've shown the tendency to do a lot because they trust their pass rush will get there because they got some dynamic pass rushers too, and that's kind of their way of and that's their way of securing their coverage. They know that opposing teams will only have so long with the freakish, Myles Garrett over there rushing the passer. You only have so long to get rid of the football. So they won't be stranded in man coverage, having to defend for 5-6 seconds. Now, if Dak can extend plays, maybe that could be the case. But the truth is that's, their defensive front, they're pretty good at being able to keep quarterbacks in the pocket and slowly squeeze and collapse that pocket. But that's the concern. Cowboys can't run the ball. They're one-dimensional. If they're one-dimensional, they decide if they're getting beat by CeeDee Lamb and that Dak-CeeDee Lamb connection, just take CeeDee Lamb out of the game. Easier said than done, but they could just roll coverage over there and say, beat us with anybody else. And do the Cowboys have the other weapons to beat? Can Brandon Cooks and Jake Ferguson, can they be the catalyst in the passing game for the Cowboys if they take CD away? So I think that may be the blueprint this year because you don't have to worry about the run game as much. Stop the run game with just your front without having to over allocate resources to stop the run. And that gives you freedom to double roll coverage to CD. And then what's the price you have to pay for doing that? Brandon Cooks, Jake Ferguson, will they make defenses pay for doing that? That's the question. I think that's what the Browns are going to do on Sunday.
Yeah. And again, and this is also a really young offensive line now. They've rebuilt so much of it that you always just go on the road on your first game, the regular season for some of these guys. And, you want to make sure you don't get a couple penalties early on and push your team back and make it to where it has to be. Where you're not running the ball because you can't, and you're not running the ball because you get pushed back into these long situations where they're really just able to sit back and defend CD and make you have to try and win in other ways.
Yep. If the Cowboys can run the ball, though, that it really does change the dynamic. But that's right. And do we know how much CD's going to play? That's another thing too.
I don't know. I mean, you assume he's going to be ready.
Yeah, no, I know he's going to be ready, but do they put a pitch count on him because he came into camp a little late? You know, I mean, I don't know that. I'm just asking. In terms of breaking down the game and the matchup. That is also something to consider. If that is something the Cowboys are doing, just want to ease him in. I'm not sure about that at all. But the defensive side for the Cowboys, I like that Cowboys defense. I think Micah and DeMarcus Lawrence on the edges, I think they're going to be a problem. I really am curious to see if the Mossy Smith experiment works. But remember, they brought in Linval Joseph. They brought in Jordan. They brought in some vets that, just in case the Mossy Smith experiment doesn't work, it won't completely derail the defense. It won't just completely derail things. They have vets they can throw in there that can at least keep the linebackers in Zimmer's scheme clean. And that's their basic fundamental responsibility of those interior defensive. Can you keep the offensive linemen from getting to the second level, from reaching the linebackers, and let them flow to the football? And the veteran guys can do that. Now, if they can add a pass rushing element, or they can be penetrators and get into the backfield and make plays in the backfield in the run game, that's great. That's awesome. But I think they want their number one responsibility to be, hey, can you keep my linebackers clean? And the vets they brought in can do that. Now, Mozzie Smith is the guy they expect to be a war daddy at one point, and I'm not sure if he's going to live up to those expectations. But defensively, the Browns got a lot of weapons, but Deshaun Watson, we talked about this yesterday. We don't know what version of Deshaun Watson we're going to get. Does he continue to improve, or does he even get close to the 2020 Deshaun Watson, which played like a top 5 quarterback in the league and was probably the greatest performance ever for a quarterback on a losing team? Does he get back to that Deshaun Watson? If he does, then we're having a very different conversation, because it may be bleak for the Cowboys. But Deshaun Watson's performance, since then has been that of a average to above average quarterback, and he hasn't played at a transcendent elite level for the Browns just yet. But now with any consistency, I'm sure there have been flashes. I'm talking about on a consistent stretch. And as Patrick mentioned, he hadn't been healthy enough to play on a consistent stretch for him like that. So the Browns are loaded. The Browns right now, talent-wise, they're just as talented as the Cowboys, talent-wise.
Yeah. And I
mean,
they
really are.
That defense was so good last season that if they're able to continue that at all this season, it'll be tough sledding for the Cowboys, especially, if you mentioned if CeeDee Lamb goes on a pitch count, where we find this running game. I have no idea what the running back rotation is for the Cowboys.
I don't know. That's a great point.
I was somewhat surprised at how many snaps that Hill got last night for the Ravens. That was somewhat surprising. You thought that Derrick Henry was going to be the guy for way more snaps than he was. So you don't know. I mean, I don't know if it's going to be. You would assume Dottle would be the lead back, really, that would get the most plays.
I agree with you. That.
But I feel like Zeke's going to be the starter.
Yep.
And it's the question is who gets the most plays then, and then where does Deuce Vaughn, does he fit into this scheme at all? I don't think Dalvin Cook's going to be on the roster yet, but he may be. Does he figure in any of this? It'll be interesting to watch, nonetheless, just to see who gets snaps at the running back position.
Yeah, I don't know what and Rico Dowdle is the better running back right now, but I don't know if they trust him in every situation, but stats wise, he's better than Zeke right now.
Yeah, I mean,
don't know if the Cowboys want to admit that.
Zeke is probably the smarter running back.
I was say, he might know the system. But I don't know.
Well, I mean, just if you watch Zeke run,
Rico's been there forever too. Though,
Zeke can find, Zeke he can make a cut. He can find a hole. He can wait for the line to develop. Rico Dottle is much more of you hand him the ball and he is running at that hole where it's supposed to be, full speed. And so if the hole's there, it's great. And if the hole's not, it doesn't work. But if Zeke waits for the hole to develop and it doesn't, he loses 2 or 3 yards every time because he doesn't have that ability to break through tackles like he used to. So you're kind of having to pick what poison you're going with there because you don't have an all-around back. But yeah, I mean, especially if you're putting CD on any sort of a pitch count and he has to come out of that game. If you're the Browns, I mean, Do you just pretty much straight load the box every time CeeDee Lamb comes out? Do you think, well, we can play man on man with Brandon Cooks and Fergie? Like, we're not worried about anybody else really beating us in the passing game.
Yeah.
And we just come after Dak as
that.
soon as that happens. We just load up and go right after him.
Yep. I mean, that I would if you don't have, and really, do you need to even stack the box against the Cowboys? It's a running game that potent. I think you devote resources to the pass. Now, by the way, the Browns last season, you will look at I think they were total defense wise. You look at just total defense, they were one of the best defenses in the league. If you look at total defense, they also one of the best defenses in the league in their pass defense. They were top total defense in the league. Not that matters as much as scoring defense. I think scoring defense, they were like 12th. But their pass defense was great. They allowed the fewest passing yards per game in the league last year. So then they play a lot of man defense. Like I said, so they trust their man defense. So the question is for the Cowboys, and you're going up in there, you're going strength on strength. Cowboys' strength is their passing game. The Texas Coast offense, Dak Prescott played like an MVP last year. And the Browns passing defense last season was the best pass defense in the league. And they were very opportunistic, and they had a pass rush too. So you need some kind of running game, maybe the screen game, just to keep, Myles Garrett from, from just pinning his ears back and forcing those guys to at least respect the run. So that's going to be a good that matchup. I'm not sure how it's going to work out for the Cowboys. I just don't know how the running game looks, and I don't know how they're gonna, CeeDee Lamb, how they're gonna defend CeeDee Lamb. They just double him. But now that he's established as all pro, like, he's in that rarefied air of wide receivers, you just double him and take him away. And is that different than, something the Cowboys had to deal with last year because they were a different team that had a threat of the run game? And, I think people were a little caught by surprise. Remember early in the season, they weren't getting the ball to CeeDee Lamb. The CeeDee Lamb thing didn't happen. I remember this until like week 5 or 6.
I remember talking about it on air a lot.
Yep. Yeah. I was like, I got to get the ball to CeeDee Lamb.
Like, what is going on?
Off.
Yeah. Took off. But I mean, and you could see Brandon Cooks, we know that Brandon Cooks has talent on that team. So Brandon's going to be able to get something going. But if you make him the number one and you're trying to get to him with CeeDee Lamb off the field, I think it's a lot harder. Then, hopefully if he's healthy, I think he dealt with some injuries, some nagging injuries throughout the year last year. If he gets healthy, he could return to, he's not going to beat coverage necessarily, but if he can get his routes out there and get open and just, you can kind of scheme him a little bit more open and trust CeeDee Lamb to just be a world beater. I don't know. You may be able to use Brandon Cooks a little bit more early in the season when he's feeling healthy.
Exactly. That's the key part of it too. At the end, when he's feeling healthy, get him while he's fresh, because chances are at the end of the season you won't have that. All right, there you go. Cowboys, Browns, big matchup this weekend to kick off the season 4 of the Dallas Cowboys. We come back, we'll get into what the facts, what the stats on the other side. Got plenty of facts and stats to share with you from the game last night, the Ravens and the Chiefs, but also with the upcoming NFL and college football weekend. All of that and more right here on the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis. I'm Lifetime Longhorn Rod Davis coming back on the Horn. All right, I guarantee the NFL is not happy about this number from the thrilling Kansas City win over Baltimore last night. I'm sure they love the result. It was dramatic. Showed America why the NFLs are the number one TV show in America. It's thrilling, best reality TV you can get. But the kickoffs, the new dynamic kickoff rule, 11 kickoffs, 9 were touchbacks. All 6 kickoffs by the Chiefs, Harrison Butker, were touchbacks, went deep into the end zone, and Ravens kicker Justin Tucker had 3 kickoffs go for touchbacks, and 2 of those were returned. The 2 returns, nothing special. Carson Steele, Crocky J, as he's known, isn't it? Crocky J is his nickname because of the crocodile thing. He started. He had 1 return for 28 yards to the 31-yard line, and he had a 29-yard return. And I think they had a penalty on that one, so that one got pushed back actually to the 19.
Yeah,
so,
I did see. It looked like the Ravens at least tried to get some in there, and then they went into the end zone, but they were trying to get it like they're trying to find that spot of it, that sweet zone of the back of the landing.
Harbaugh's a special teams coach, by his trade, so of course he's gonna try. He's like,
I think that they may have had the lesson of statistically seeing of where it lands in that catching zone, that if you get it at the 10, that the odds of it going back out to past the 30 are way higher than if you get it like inside the 5. And so you're basically trying to get everything in that really slim area of a kickoff of if you can put it right there, then we have a good shot to get them. But if you put it anywhere else, it's better to get the touchback. So just either get it in that or in the end zone, but don't kick it to the 15-yard line, or else they're going to get great field position.
Yeah, and that's why he's starting to see teams to say, you know what, we're not even going to bother. We're just going to kick it through the end zone, deal with it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what the Chiefs are like, no, we're not even going to bother. It's not worth our practice time. It ain't worth the personnel we got to acquire to do it. It's just not worth it. And unfortunately, the NFL, you may have more than half the teams decide it's not worth it for us.
Yeah.
We don't care that much.
No,
and they do that. The NFL's got to change the rule again.
Yeah, it'll go push back to the 35.
It's exactly right. They'll push you back to 35. All right, here's another what the facts, what the stats. How about this one? And this is about Xavier Worthy. Shout out to Xavier Worthy, whose first touch in the NFL was a touchdown. So had a hell of a day. Ended up having 3 touches, and 3 touches, and 2 of those ended up going for touchdowns for Xavier Worthy. He is the second player since the merger with a touchdown catch of 20-plus yards and a touchdown run of 20-plus yards in his NFL debut. The last guy to do it was James Brim as a replacement player in 1987 in the Vikings versus the Packers. Isn't that crazy? That's how rare it is to have a 20-plus, an explosive touchdown on the ground and via the air in your rookie debut in the league. It just don't happen. That ain't supposed to happen.
No,
but.
Well, you're not supposed to let Xavier Worthy go to the Chiefs.
I know. Blame the damn Bill. Everybody was thinking the same thing last night. Like, what's effing Bills?
Unless the Bills win the Super Bowl this year, I blame them. If they win the Super Bowl, then good on them. They made it work. But that's your only out for this.
That's your only out. And you know what? That the offense better be good. If the offense isn't good, people be like, y'all should just draft Xavier Worthy anyway. It would help the offense a little bit too, even if you didn't like him in cold weather.
Hey man, there's gonna be some pressure on Keon Coleman in week 1, huh?
Yes, there will be. No, it's a good point, man. That's a great point. He at least gotta get a touchdown. If he don't get there's no touchdown, and people will definitely go back to that draft as well, because I can't help thinking about it as a Texans fan too. Love it as a Longhorn fan, hate it as a Texans fan. All right, there you go. That's some what the facts, what the stats. Oh, by the way, Xavier Worthy on that run, he got up to 18.4 miles per hour was his top speed. So it looked like he was running faster than that, but he only got up to 18.4 miles per hour. Yeah.
Well, run is because he was behind linemen for a lot of it.
Yeah, he was actually. Yeah, I think he was. That's a good point.
I think it was a good run in the fact that he was behind linemen, and then there was some. I guess it was a defensive lineman that was trying to take an angle on him, and that's when he just hit the jets at the end, and you see the guy like leave his feet to go make the tackle, and then just miss him. Couldn't catch him.
Yeah, he got destroys angles. He thought you had the angle on him, and then he hits jets, he hits another gear, and he's gone. I mean, As I can't wait to see how Andy Reid uses them. We'll talk more about this on the other side. But yeah, everybody pretty much had the same response to Xavier Worthy, having 2 touchdowns in that opening game versus Baltimore. It was like, man, the effing Bills. They're the reason that is happening. They're the reason now the Kansas City passing game now has explosivity and verticality. Thanks, Buffalo. All right, we come back. We'll get into that game last night, that thrilling, dramatic win for Kansas City. We'll talk about X-Man's impact and effect on that Kansas City offense. And also, of course, Texas versus Michigan. Actually, there's a lesson that I think Sark can learn from Andy Reid and something that he decided to deploy at really an extreme rate in the first half of that game versus Baltimore. We'll talk about that on the other side too. All of that and more right here on the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis. I'm Lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers coming back on the horn. Welcome back to the Rodcast. It is a 5-1-2 Friday edition of the Rodcast. That's when Patrick, the ideal on the show, my co-host, that's when he plays jams from very talented human beings, very talented folks that you have a chance to catch live right here in the ATX. Who we jamming right now, Patrick?
This is Ruby Dice, and she is playing tonight at ABGB.
I like that. Nice. Patrick also comes up with the topic for the big fat poll of the day that is already posted at the Horn ATX on X. You can go check it out for yourself and go participate in the voting. Patrick, give the folks the topic for the big fat poll of the day.
Poll of the day: how many points will Texas score against Michigan? Feel free to drop in your final score predictions as well there on X at the Horn ATX or over there on the text line 512-447-3776. We've got right now, I gave you 0 to 10, 10 to 20, 20 to 30, and 30 plus. Right now, 20 to 30 is leading the way. We assumed it would with 65% of the vote. 30 plus, though, is firmly in second place at 26% and 27% of the vote. And then there's only 8% of people have voted so far. I believe it'll be less than 20 points for Texas.
That's some Michiganders. There's more Michiganders down here in Texas than you know. The Michiganders. That's what that is. That's definitely what it is. No, but I listen, the 30 plus thing, I could see it happening. The crazy part is I could just see them pulling away late because we talk about their run. Sark's offenses, and they have been for the last 4 years. They have these runs, and we literally just saw one in the Colorado State game. Game was tight till set to the 6 minutes left in the second quarter. That's a 10-0 game, and then boom, Texas scores 3 touchdowns in like a 6-7 minute span at the end of the second quarter, and then games out of hand. I mean, it was a Quinn. They had a touchdown, and then I think they had the interception by Jay Barron, and he runs it deep into their territory. They get another touchdown. Then the defense gets a 3 and out, and then Silas Bolden has a punt return, and they get another touchdown. Game's out of hand. Game's over, pretty much. And it happens like that. Honestly, and I talked about this too. Go remember that Rice game from last year. I talked about Longhorn fans were not very confident going into the Alabama game about the offensive line because of the way the offensive line looked versus Rice in week 1 of last year. And remember, that was a run in that game in like the third quarter that really put it away. That game was like a 16-3 game or something like that at halftime. It wasn't a blowout at halftime of that Texas Rice game. And in the third quarter, the Sark run. Boom. I think it was like maybe that was like a 7-8 minute span where Texas pulled away and scored 3 touchdowns. But that's how Sark's teams are operating. Remember the first year couldn't hold the lead when you would have those runs early in the game, and then you would have the epic collapse by the team. And last year you still had those runs, and we get up by 3 scores and 20-21 points. And you were able to hold the lead because you had more clutch players, and Sark was doing a better job of managing the game and evolving as a coach. And now he's, I think, understood like that's the complementary football that he talks about. That's what the runs are based on. He always talks about complementary football. Last game, special teams contributed to that run with the Silas Bolden punt return. The defense contributed to that run, Ja'Day Barron interception and getting them great field position. That's when the run can't, it's not just the offense. It can't be, because the run would never happen if the defense doesn't either get the ball back quickly on the 3 and out or get an interception or get, there's a big play on the defense that contributes our special teams as well. And that's kind of how the runs happen. I bet if I went back and marked it, that you would have like defense. Think about the Alabama game last year. The Jaron Thompson interception pretty much starts that run late in the game. Then you pull away from Alabama. And so when is the run going to happen? Because I don't even think that Michigan's blueprint may be to stop you from having that run. Washington did a good job. When you limit possessions for Sark, you can limit the run. And that's what Washington did. Texas is still going to score, but you don't want the run. You don't want the Golden State Warrior, Steph Curry-like run where you're in the game and then you look up and go, okay, we're out of the game. What happened? I thought this was a tight game. Now I got to change my entire approach. We just got to abandon the run and just start throwing the football downfield because these guys are pulled away from us. That's what you're trying to avoid with Texas. And you can avoid that by limiting possessions. And if Texas is their own worst enemy, then both happened in that Washington game. So there was no run really there. Texas scored, but what was the run where they pull away? No run. And Sark's offense is kind of it built that way. And then you didn't really have that run in the Oklahoma game either, because of some of the early turnovers. But Texas is built to win a shootout. So if it becomes a shootout, which that game became, Texas can win that type of game too. Like I said, there are multiple ways for Texas to win. But ideally, Sark wants to win with that run, putting him up at one point, and then he wants to bludgeon you with the run game after that. Because the run is usually it's going to be a lot of it's going to be the passing game. Think about it. Think about the run in your head, right? It's always, big play, special teams defense, then the run. It's a big play by the offense and big play by the passing game on the offense specifically. And the run game is designed once Texas is up, bludgeon you with the run game, just pound you into submission. Ideally, that was the Bama blueprint. That's what he wants to do versus Michigan. Will he be able to do that? I don't know if it'll work out that way, but that's what he wants to do. And that can be a 21-point swing for Texas. 17, 20-point swing it is sometimes. And then you get up and you're like, are they going to beat Bama by double digits in Tuscaloosa? Yeah. Because not even Nick Saban and Bama can stop the run. Once Texas gets rolling downhill, man, it's tough. It is. It's very intimidating because it really is. It steamrolls. And that's what you're trying to avoid. Washington did a good job. I think Kalen DeBoer understands how Sark's teams work. And he's all about keep the ball and limit the run. Don't allow that run to happen. When we see them score, we need to keep the ball so that we'll just keep it for 8 plays. I don't even care if we score. We just don't need to give them the ball back immediately because we need to counter that momentum.
Yeah. That
they're trying to monopolize. That's why Kalen DeBoer is good against Sark. It comes down to the wire, but he's pretty good against them. And I think that's what Michigan's going to try to achieve. Limit possessions and therefore limit the run or at least stop the run. And if you can stop the run, you stand a good chance. You still can get beat, but at least it won't be the run. Sometimes the run lasts the whole damn game. You can't stop it. Oklahoma State, Big 12 title game, Texas Tech. The run is oh man, they could never stop it. It wasn't just a run. It ends up being a blowout, being a landslide. But most of the time, the run will subside, as we've seen. And then when it subsides, as an opponent, can you withstand it? Or where are you when the run subsides? Are you down 2 scores? Are you down 3 touchdowns? Where are you? And then what's your plan? Because last year it was easy. We're just going to throw the football when we get back in the game. This year, I don't know if it's going to be easy because the Texas pass defense looks much improved. And Michigan don't throw the football very well. They just don't. So that's going to be Michigan's, I think, conundrum. How do we withstand the run that Sark's, that seems inevitable on a lot of Sark teams? But if their way forcing turnovers, forcing negative plays, getting pressure, those are all ways to try to counter those inevitable runs by Texas. All right, so I can see him getting the 30s. Basically, my point.
Yeah.
I can see him getting the 30. I can see it happening. Yeah. All right, let's get to the Horn headlines, and then we'll come back. We'll talk more Texas, Michigan, but we'll get to the game last night, talk about Xavier Worthy's performance, and then we'll also talk about the, I think, just disappointing miscalculation, the dang coaching mistake by the Baltimore Ravens that I think may have ultimately led to them losing this game. We'll get to that too. But first, let's get updated, educated, and informed with Patrick Davis and the Horn headlines.
All right, your Horn headlines brought to you by Top Gun Rentals and Lawn Equipment. In the MLB, the Astros lost the last game of their series 1-0 to the Reds yesterday, getting swept and knocking them to 5-5 in their last 10 games. Hunter Brown had a quality start, pitching 6 scoreless innings, striking out 6, but the offense could only muster 4 hits. The Astros now return home to take on the Diamondbacks, sending Framber Valdez to the mound tonight. The Rangers won the first game of their series to the Angels 3-1 last night, with Adolis Garcia's first inning 3-run homer powering the team to victory. Cody Bradford pitched 6 innings, only giving up 1 run in one of his best outings since returning from injury. And the win is the 3rd straight for the Rangers and the 8th straight in the last 10 games. Gerson Garabito gets a start for the Rangers tonight after being called up from the minors earlier this week. And in the NFL, the Chiefs pulled off a 27-20 win over the Ravens in the season kickoff last night after a game-tying touchdown was reversed in the final seconds due to Isaiah Likely's toes landing just out of bounds. Xavier Worthy made the most of his opportunity, scoring 2 touchdowns on 3 touches with 68 yards of total offense. Tonight, the Packers take on the Eagles in Sao Paulo, Brazil, as the rest of the league begins on Sunday with the Texans starting their season in Indianapolis against the Colts and Dallas traveling to Cleveland to face the Browns. And that is your Horn headlines.
All right, thank you, Patrick. I'm upset, like a lot of you NFL fans out there, especially if you are a fan of an AFC team, that we were all right about Xavier Worthy and his compatibility with the Kansas City Chiefs. As a Longhorn fan, we all knew it was perfect, but blame the Buffalo Bills that he ended up with Kansas City of all teams. And he added exactly what I've been saying he was going to add to that offense: explosivity and verticality. And yesterday I threw the idea out there. This may be potentially the best version of the Kansas City teams that Patrick Mahomes has been able to, obviously lead potentially to a Super Bowl. They got those elements just potentially, and the passing game worked out just the way I thought it would. Unfortunately for us who are Texans fans or a fan of any of the AFC team, he added explosivity and he added verticality. Right, I love this. Is my favorite stat that proves that the Chiefs last year had four total plays, just four touchdowns, where they scored those touchdowns on plays of 20 plus yards. So you had four touchdowns of 20 plus yards the entire season last year, and Xavier Worthy had two such touchdowns on three touches in his first game and his debut with the Kansas City Chiefs. Crazy. So yeah, he's already going to be an explosive, dynamic weapon with them, and that is troublesome enough. But then he's not the number one, though. He's not the number one. Rashee Rice is clearly the number one. He got 9 targets and 7 receptions, over 100 yards, but he's getting schemed open. This is the crazy thing. He's being schemed open. He got 78 yards after the catch. And so he's the number one guy. And then, by the way, we all know they're not even the most dangerous element of the offense is the bromance between Patrick Mahomes in the passing game and Travis Kelce. That's the most dangerous because that bromance has been unstoppable and has led them to, right now where they are potentially going to three-peat, all right, as Super Bowl champions. So now as a defense, you got to make that choice. And it's a pick your poison scenario because you cannot put a safety over the top of X-Man because every DB wants a safety over the top because I may not be able to run with this dude when he hits he hits that top gear. I may be just done. I'm not physically, I can't do it, coach. I tried. I can't. You're asking me to win a football race, the fastest human being arguably in NFL history. I can't do that. Your technique don't help me here. You need a safety over the top. So you can choose not to put a safety over the top, and we'll see what happens. Or you can choose to help out and bracket Travis Kelce and try to thwart the greatest or potentially the greatest bromance in NFL history between Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce, giving him more room to work in the short to intermediate area where he doesn't even run routes. He just gets open. So you can't even defend him with traditional football logic because he's just running around like it's somebody's backyard getting open, and the chemistry between him and Patrick Mahomes is uncanny. So you can try to defend that, or you can try to defend their true number one, which is Rashee Rice, and just double him, which you try to do with a lot of number one wide receivers to take them out of the game. You can't do all three, though. You can't do all three. It is numerically impossible because football is a game that's built on numbers. You can't do all three. So which one are you going to choose? And whichever choice you make is the wrong choice because Patrick Mahomes will take whatever. He'll take the path of least resistance. So if you're Travis Kelce, yeah, I'm sure they try to take Travis. They know they played Travis. They played the Chiefs tonight. We got to stop Travis Kelce. All right, he had 3 receptions for 34 yards. We did good on Travis Kelce. What about Rashee Rice? Yeah, 7 for 103. What about X-Man? Yeah, 3 touches for 68 yards, 2 touchdowns. Now they're really tough to stop. And the crazy thing about it was last year, even though they won the Super Bowl, they were not on their way to three-peating, guys. They were not. That offense had become too dink and dunk. It had become too anemic. I gave you the stats yesterday. Patrick Mahomes had his worst year ever as a passer. He had 14 interceptions. He had his lowest career numbers in touchdown rate, yards per attempt, yards per completion, passing yards per game. On passes 10 yards or more, he was 28th in the NFL in rating, and he completed just 45% of those passes with 2 touchdowns and 9 interceptions. They were not on their way to three-peating. They won that Super Bowl by barely the hair on their chinny chin. And if they didn't get Xavier Worthy, and now they got Hollywood Brown and of course Rashee Rice, everybody thought that he was going to be dealing with discipline from the NFL and be suspended. That's not happening until after the season. So that wide receiver room went from the worst in the NFL with 44 drops last year to now being one of the most dangerous in the NFL with the addition of Xavier Worthy, the ascension of Rashee Rice, and then, like I said, we didn't even see Hollywood Brown or anybody else featured, but they got other weapons too. So, yeah, they're more dangerous now than they have been in a while. Definitely since they had Tyreek Hill. They have not been this dangerous offensively.
No, and then Patrick Mahomes actually did run the ball a few times in the game. One of them, he had a nice run, but it got called back and then there was a late hit at the end of it. But then it got called back because of a hold at the beginning that didn't even need the hold. So, yeah, I mean, if you see what they can do, that the Noah Gray, they just tell him to go sit in the middle of the field. They go, Kelsey's over on the sideline. Xavier Worthy's deep. You just go sit in the middle. There's no one left.
That's nobody.
They're allocating all resources to all these other guys we know that can beat them. And so we'll run 2 tight ends with them thinking there's no way they're going to use this other tight end to just go out and get a catch too. They can't have 2 tight ends that are beating us, and they did.
You're right. You can't afford to worry about that dude. You're like, man, if that dude gets 7 catches on us and beats us, hey, you know what? We'll leave with that. Go with God. We can't because you can't be worried about that. You got too many headaches going on with the Kansas City Chiefs. So yeah, the Rashee Rice. How about this? He and Xavier Worthy both had 77% route participation, which is good. But how about this target share? Rashee Rice, 33%. Xavier Worthy was at 11%. Travis Kelce's at 15% target share. Travis Kelce's at 87%. He leads all the receivers in route participation. He's always out there because he's the biggest matchup nightmare for you. Trying to figure out, like, do I put a safety on him? Do I put a nickel on him? Do I let a linebacker try to cover this dude? I thought it would be tough for the Kansas City Chiefs to three-peat, but now they look like they got a top 10 defense now. All right. And now an offense that is more dangerous than it has been since Tyreek Hill was there. Damn it. It's upsetting. I'm happy for Xavier Worthy, though. He's in a perfect place for him. Good for him. Okay, so let's get to the game, though. Some other elements that I want to talk about, some headlines from this game. I cannot believe it. And when I had to go back and rewatch it, and then I had to go back and rewatch it again, that on the 2 most critical, 2 most important downs of the game for the Ravens, when they march all the way down the field, right, in under 2 minutes, starting they're on 13-yard line, I believe, march all the way down the field, and then the last 10 seconds of the game, they got those 2 opportunities to try to get into the end zone on their 10-yard line, 2nd and goal, and that 3rd and goal. 2nd and goal was the pass to Zay Flowers, where Zay Flowers looked like he was open, and that was a miscommunication, and Lamar Jackson looked like he missed him. We'll hear from Lamar Jackson, by the way, about that. And then the 3rd and goal was that last play where Isaiah likely caught it, but ended up being out of bounds by just the tip of his toe. And then the Kansas City Chiefs win the game as a result of that incompletion. On both of those plays, and I can't believe it, on both of those. And by the way, can we hear from Lamar Jackson, because he actually tells you? Hear from the starting quarterback himself. Listen to the whole thing, but listen to the beginning part of this, and that was probably the most shocking. But here's Lamar Jackson saying that first incompletion, at least that 2nd and goal incompletion, was actually not meant for Zay Flowers, even though everybody thought, oh, he missed Zay Flowers. There's a reason for that miscommunication. Here is Lamar Jackson.
The play before to Flowers, did that ball get hit down your hand, or was that just
No, actually, it was, I went scramble. I seen Chris Jones was on Justice Hill. Justice Hill was blocking Chris Jones, so I was trying to help Justice out, and I tried to get out of the pocket, and I seen Bateman, like, flying across, so I'm thinking Bateman going to stop, and as I'm throwing the ball, I see Zay flying across. I'm like, that wasn't intended for Zay Flowers, so... Yeah, I was teed off about that, because I'm like, if I would have held on to a little bit more, I would have just fired it to Zay for the touchdown. Yeah, like when I threw the ball, I seen him. I'm like I want to say something.
Telling you that, oh man, he that was meant for Bateman. That wasn't even meant for. He thought Bateman was going to sit it down. He didn't, and ended up throwing it. But hell, Zay Flowers was still in the neighborhood to catch it. But did you catch the first part? That Justice Hill was blocking Chris Jones. Justice Hill on both of those plays, by the way. On the third and second and goal and the third and goal, on both of them, they basically had slide protection and they slid the protection away from Chris Jones. Now they do move Chris Jones around, so they don't make it easy for you. And he ended up being on the edge, and they slid protection the opposite way, and it ended up being Chris Jones being blocked by Justice Hill twice. First of all, you got to give Spagnuolo a lot of credit. That's just brilliant scheming by him, getting his best player matched up on. Talk about a mismatch. That's crazy. You asking Justice Hill was like, you gotta be effing kidding me, man. I gotta block Chris Jones. Like, I know I did it on the second and goal. He's probably like, all right, that was a mistake. We won't let it happen again. Coach will fix it this time. Now we'll have an adjustment in here. We'll make it the proper, adjustment for the protection. And then he ends up blocking Chris Jones again on the third and goal. And both times, Lamar Jackson is rushed and he is under duress from who? From Junk Jones. Always letting it hang. But it's crazy. How could they make such a coaching error? That's wild. I can't believe that. Now, I don't know who sets the protection. Maybe it's Lamar Jackson. Maybe it's the center. All right. But that should have been relayed in after the second and goal from the sideline, like, hey, or from the booth, like, hey, I realize we had Justice Hill blocking Chris Jones on that one. We got to do something about that. Yeah, let's slide protection to Chris Jones. Slide it to him. That's what they slide it to him. Everything else will adjust to, but slide protection to Chris Jones. That's the new adjustment. Should have been us. That should have been the game plan. Slide to Chris Jones. Who else you sliding protection to? Who? Nobody. I mean, nobody else to me is as dangerous and as impactful as that dude. Now you can make the argument that Chris Jones won 2 Super Bowls for Kansas City. You can legitimately make that argument. I was at the last Super Bowl, and I remember he's in overtime. I remember the play because Brock Purdy. It seemed like Brock Purdy had a shot. It was third down. But it was a 3rd and 4. On the Kansas City, it was on 3rd and 4 to Kansas City 9-yard line. Purdy took a shotgun snap, faced immediate pressure up the middle from Chris Jones. This was in overtime, when the game was on the line. And in overtime, he's the guy. That pressure was why Brock Purdy missed. He got rid of the ball, desperate pass, intended for Jennings, I believe, who was wide open, by the way, But Purdy rushed it because of Chris Junk Jones. 49 to set up for a field goal and a 22-19 lead. But we know against Mahomes, that ain't nearly enough. Right? So, and then remember, the first Super Bowl the first time 49ers and the Kansas City Chiefs met and Kansas City beat them the first time Super Bowl, 5:26 left in the game. 49ers were trying to protect the 2017 lead, and San Francisco threw the football on 2nd and 5, and Raheem Mostert had, I think he had just rushed for like 5 yards. I don't know why they were throwing it, but they were throwing it. And it was Junk Jones, once again, who got a deflected pass, got a batted down pass. He batted the pass down. And I believe they were throwing to Kittle, and Kittle was open. And then he had another batted pass in that game. When the Chiefs were trying to defend their 4-point lead with less than 2 minutes in the game, Junk Jones, another batted pass. I mean, you could argue those plays that he made were so crucial and so clutch, in fact, that they are some of the biggest reasons or most important factors in Kansas City winning those Super Bowls. And you block that dude with a running back? Come on now. That's crazy. That's a dang coaching mistake. And I think probably the biggest mistake they made in the game that ended up losing the game. If you could make the argument that on those plays, if you block Chris Jones with an offensive lineman or you chip him with the running back, while, obviously you double team them in some regard, that you have enough time to make those throws. And that we're talking about a very different result. So that is, but that's the Kansas City Chiefs in a nutshell. Spags is the best defensive coordinator in the league. Don't get enough credit. And I think, now people are starting to see how special Spags is as a coordinator and how he can move around those different pieces. Certainly had the, and by the way, I thought the L'Jarius Sneed loss would hurt him a little bit too. Didn't hurt him. The young kid they have now is his name Jalen Watson at cornerback. Him and Trent McDuffie picked up right where L'Jarius Sneed left off. They're still playing press, still doing what they do. And think about it, they find these. Remember Travarius Ward? He was with them and ended up leaving, going to 49ers, becoming all pro with them. Now L'Jarius Sneed left. He's going to be with the Tennessee Titans, and they just found another dude in the middle rounds. Like, no, we'll find another one. Brett Veach is a beast. He really is. They got another starting left tackle. Remember they got the young kid Sumayataya, Sumayataya, I believe is his name.
The left tackle,
I'm sure I screwed it up. Yeah, new starting left tackle. No big deal. He actually looked pretty good, but he's had a different left tackle in every Super Bowl that he's played in. Different starting left tackle in every Super Bowl. What quarterback has had that? Well, first of all, most quarterbacks don't end up playing in that many Super Bowls, but still to have a different tackle, that's wild. To have a different starting left tackle, that's like a foundational position, and yet he's able to thrive without it. That's how good the dude is. All right, we'll get back to some more NFL news, notes, and nuggets. We'll come back. We got to talk Texas versus Michigan on the other side. There actually is a lesson I think Sark can learn. It'll help him in this Michigan game from Andy Reid and his approach to being an extremist with this particular concept versus the Ravens. We'll come back and discuss that and hear from Steve Sarkisian on the other side right here on the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis. I'm Lifetime Low and Rod Davis coming back on the Horn. All right, welcome back to the Rodcast. Let's talk some Texas football. Go behind the burnt orange curtain to hear from the head coach, Steve Sarkisian. Had some interesting things to say in his media availability yesterday. Let's start with the wide receiver rotation. That is a deep room, and I think it's going to be one of the biggest advantages Texas has against Michigan. They got probably the best corner in college football in Will Johnson, but they ain't got 5 Will Johnsons. So can they cover all of Texas' weapons? He'll start talking about what that wide receiver rotation could look like versus the Michigan Wolverines.
Yeah, I still think we're a little bit of a work in progress in that we have one game sample size, and even at that, it was a little bit limited just because of how the game went. But I will say it was comforting to know that I didn't have to leave guys on the field as they were getting fatigued, as you could noticeably see them getting fatigued, that we had enough confidence in the next wave or the guy behind that guy to put him on the field. And all they did was give me even more confidence, whether it was Ryan Wingo, Jonte Cook, Silas Bolden. I mean, when those guys went on the field, they made their plays. And so I think it's very comforting for us as a staff to know that we have 6 really quality receivers that can play and play at a high level. The moment never felt too big for any of them. I love kind of having cross-train Ryan Niblett because of the fact that he can do things out of the backfield and at receiver. And so it gives us a lot of versatility that way to still pour into our 21 package stuff, but also, have the ability to play in 11 and to do both those things. So, again, as we continue to grow throughout the season, I think time will tell. But going into week 2, I think the biggest thing I got out of it was just confidence in all of those guys that when they're on the field, they're gonna play well.
Love that. Y'all guys know I've been saying for I don't know as long as I can remember on these airways that positionless football is the future of football. You don't have to major in it, but you should minor in it. And Shano majors in it with San Fran. Dan Quinn majors in it defensively. But what about other coaches? And I think Sark now he's starting to minor in it. Talking about Ryan Niblett. One player can make you multiple, take you from 21 to 11 personnel, vice versa. Within one single play on between on drives, you can switch up your mentality with certain athletes. Love that part about that piece of audio. But getting to the wide receiver rotation, it is deep, which is why I think you should break out that 10 personnel package versus Michigan. The red package he had at Alabama when he had 4 first-round wide receivers, you can break it out versus Michigan. Like I said, they don't have 5 Will Johnsons. It'd be the perfect time to break it out. You haven't put it on film. It'd be something they haven't prepared for, and you got the wide receiver depth to do it. You go 4, 5, 6 deep at wide receiver right now. And imagine 4 of your best wide receivers out there. Imagine Jonte Cook, Ryan Wingo, Golden, and Bond, or put Bolden, whatever you want to do. And then Jaden Blue in the backfield, and then you motion to empty formation against Michigan. There's no way they got the speed to match up with that. There's no way. And as long as Quinn can handle it, which I think he can, in empty formation, he was pretty good in the game versus Colorado State. They had 2 explosive plays out of empty, and they only ran it 3 times. So the explosive play rate's pretty high out of it. And I think with this, the more speed you infuse into that package, the better. Remember last year, I gave you the stats. Last year, the explosive play rate for Texas last 3 games using empty formation, 33%. Keep the party going. All right, let's hear from Sark talking about another. I'm glad because this is kind of another philosophy that he's started to, start to grasp the last maybe couple of years. Remember last year, one of the big issues was Texas was starting to see things on game day that they had not prepared for, that teams had not put on film yet. Essentially, teams were breaking tendency versus Texas a lot. A lot of it was that 3 high safety defense that had been pretty effective countering Sark's offense, but he found the antidote to that. So teams were breaking tendency, and in big games, you break tendency. And Texas is a big game for a lot of teams. So Sark has now, I think, come to the realization that, hey, Texas is a big game for a lot of teams. They're going to break tendency. So now he's expecting it. He's anticipating the opposing teams breaking out some unfamiliar concepts or breaking out some new schemes that Texas hasn't seen yet. Here's Steve Sarkisian.
Yeah, it's pretty safe to say. I'm sure, like us, they have probably spent a little bit more time on us in preparation, maybe during the off season, and have studied some different things and would like to try to attack us in all three phases, maybe differently. And generally speaking, you go play that first game and you have a game plan for that first game. And then they kind of had that second game plan waiting for us. And so it's going to be critical for us to identify kind of what they're trying to do. I think this game more than ever is when we could probably really get some of the usage out of the tablets on the sidelines and some of the video that we get to see. So maybe we can make those adjustments a little quicker than when you're trying to just to talk it through. But they've got great coaches. It's a really good staff. Sharon Moore's done it. He's been there and he knows the Michigan way. I know Wink, like I said, I've known Wink for 20 years now, and he's an excellent defensive coordinator. So they're going to have a good plan. They're very good on special teams. And so, and they got good players. And so the point is when two good teams meet up, it's how do you attack one another in a way that whatever you're trying to do doesn't have holes in it, right? And that you don't get exposed anywhere until you can try to really start to, attack what's going on the field. And so, hey, we know we're going to get some new stuff, and that's why we use the adage here, trust our training. And if we can trust our training and execute early on, then we can make the proper adjustments.
Yeah, you can't prepare the guys for everything. That's what the football IQ, right? Their athletic instincts is what you want those guys to rely on. But also Texas will have the speed advantage. We talked about that. Here's start talking about the overall improvement in team speed with this particular group.
Well, I think it's probably a byproduct of, I'd say probably about three things. One is recruitability, right? We try to recruit to speed. And so as players come into our program, I'd like to think they're either fast or we think they have the ability to get faster. That's the first part, right? What are we identifying as a staff that are attributes that are important to us? You guys have heard me talk at length about big humans up front. But speed on the perimeter is important to us. And so we try to identify that. Two, I think the way we train, I think Coach Becton with his background in the track world, the way that we train our players to run for speed, to be explosive, to have the ability to change directions is something that we train to in the summer. And then the third, I think, is our nutrition piece. I think that our guys really do a good job of eating right. I think they've got a great deal of trust and confidence in our nutritionists and our dietitians of getting their bodies into optimal performance shape so that they can utilize the God-given talents that they have to go along with the work that they've put in to play fast.
All right, let's start talking about the speed on this team. And yeah, it's like an overall approach, kind of a multi-pronged overall approach to guys being fast. I guess it's strength and conditioning, and it's also dietitians and nutritionists. And then Sark talks about even Sark's scheme is built to maximize speed. And I want to get into that a little bit. Against Michigan, that is going to be an advantage. I think he should be more extreme. I've been talking about this with Sark. Become an extremist, right? He likes to be balanced, and he talks about moderation all the time, but he should be an extremist with some particular concepts and schemes, especially the ones that have really high success rate, really high explosive play rates. And one of them is pre-snap motion. I saw last night Andy Reid in the first half, 95% of his plays had some type of motion. It was the highest rate by any offense in a game since 2018. Sark's around 55% pre-snap motion. He should be near 70. 80% in this game versus Michigan, and targets to pre-snap motion, which, by the way, were pretty good in that game versus Colorado State. 80% completion percentage, a 40% explosive play rate on targets to motion, and that tracks over the last few years. 2 years ago, you were 80% completion percentage with targets to motion, 30% explosive play rate. In 2021, you were 81% completion percentage with a 30+% first down touchdown rate. In last year, 10 yards per attempt, 78% completion percentage, 24% explosive play rate, targets to motion, That is something you should be an extremist about, and a lot more emotion versus Michigan. Let's hear from Sark also talking about his quarterback, who got some experience actually at the big house from his time at Ohio State, and how Quinn's experience is going to help them in this very hostile environment on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's critical. This is a difficult environment to play in. I mean, these guys haven't won 23 in a row at home on accident. It's tough. It's a big building. It can get loud. They've got a defensive system in place that their players play a lot of confidence with. They play with a lot of swagger. You can see that on tape. But having that calming effect at quarterback, I think, is helpful for the other guys on the field. And for me, just knowing that he's going to operate the calls accordingly is comforting. Knowing that, hey, when I'm calling something, he's understanding the intent of the play call. That doesn't mean it's always going to go that way, but as long as Quinn understands the intent of the play call, generally pretty good things can come out of it.
Yeah, and that's why I said they should be a heavy pass rate, right? High pass rate, early down pass rate should be hovering around 60%. I believe first 5 drives versus Colorado State, it was at 58%. Put the game in Quinn's hands early on. Here is Sark talking about the depth at running back. Jared Gibson, who looked really good. He was your leading rusher versus Colorado State. Is it possible that if he's alignment and assignment sound, if pass protection is not an issue, that he could be in the rotation? Here's Steve Sarkisian.
Yeah, I mean, Jarek's going to play for us again. When you're kind of the third on the depth chart, and we've got 2 really good players in front of him, it's always trying to find that right rhythm for everybody involved. And every game takes on a life of its own of the way that it's going and the rhythm of the game and the score and time of possession and amount of plays ran, so on and so forth. But we have the utmost confidence in Jarek. I thought him getting, I think it was 10 carries last week or so, was big for him and just his own confidence. So it's when it happens, I don't exactly know when he's going to get into the game, but I know he'll play this Saturday.
I always thought the pony package is your most explosive, most efficient, and effective personnel package. And even against Colorado State, you couldn't run the ball at a pony, but you had your explosive play rate was above 30%, and your first down rate was above 50%, at 50%. So still really, really effective and averaging over 10 yards per attempt throwing out of the pony package. More depth you have at running back, the more you'll see that package. Hopefully you see more of Ryan Wingo because no matter what package they're using, that dude is a beast and really effective. Here is Sark talking about Ryan Wingo, the young prodigy at wide receiver.
Well, I think the thing about Ryan, even throughout the recruiting process and then early on when he got here, there was a real sense of maturity about him. He's a worker. He loves football. He's humble. He knows that he is not a finished product, but yet he continues to work every day. And as he gets incremental growth and incremental success, he just continues to stack that on top of the work that he's already put in. And so, like I said, I value the humility, but I also value the work ethic, and I also value the confidence that he has in himself to go do the things that he's doing. And so he's got a great demeanor about him, and he goes about his business the right way, not only on the field, but off the field.
Most physically gifted receiver Texas has had since probably Roy Williams, and led you in yak yards and yards receiving last game versus Colorado State. Here, last cut I want to get into because this could be big in this game where Wink Martindale, he's known for his blitz happy ways, probably the blitz happiest defensive coordinator at the college or the pro level in the last 5 or 6 years. The screen game could end up being a huge way to counter, a hugely important way to counter those blitzes and pressure packages. Here's Sark talking about his very sophisticated screen game.
Yeah, no, I don't think it's a secret. We like the screen game. Again, we have an adage on offense. The more things we can do really well, we feel like the harder we are to defend. And so we're a really good running team. We're a really good RPO team, really good drop back pass team, really good play action pass team. And if we're a really good screen team, we're a really good tempo team, whatever that is, we're trying to do as many things as we can really, really well. And we do value the screen game. And every game is different. Some games, the screen game is a real factor. In other games, maybe that's not something that we're as focused on. But it is something that I think can, create value for yourself on offense. And I know we spend time on it to be good at it. But I also know from a defensive perspective, you have to practice that when you're getting ready to play us.
Yes, Sark has one of the best screen packages in football. Period. College are pro, and screens are. It's a very sophisticated screen package, and they are a great way to counter and exploit a blitz-happy team. And Don Wink Martindale, last 6 years, his blitz rate in the NFL: third, first, sixth, first, second. So that seems to be something you'll see a lot of in that game versus Michigan. All right, we come back. We'll get into off the record on the other side. We'll have some wacky stories from the sports world, sometimes beyond the sports world, right here on the Rodcast, featuring Patrick Davis on Lifetime Longhorn. Rod Babers coming back on the horn. All right, welcome back to the Rodcast. Hard to call the Chiefs Ravens a rivalry because it's pretty one sided. Lamar Jackson's record against as a starter against the Kansas City Chiefs. Oh man, 1-5 now against the Kansas City Chiefs. Got to do something about that. So, but there's a lot of bad blood. Nice. Oh, Taylor Swift. There's bad blood between the two. And Taylor Swift was there, and we didn't talk a lot about Taylor Swift. That is growth. God bless America. Yeah, right. There wasn't the headlines weren't dominated by Taylor Swift, and she was there. So at least we're getting accustomed to it. We're getting used to it, so it's not such a big deal. But anyway, there is some trash talk happening between the two. First, we'll get to Patrick Mahomes because Patrick Mahomes, in a very classy way, because Patrick Mahomes is a classy dude. He was asked about the Isaiah Likely, touchdown that was reversed and ended up being an incomplete pass. Could have been potentially been a game winner, and he was asked his thoughts on it. Here is Patrick Mahomes in the post game talking about that Isaiah Likely play and giving some advice, little friendly advice for Isaiah Likely.
Because it looked good from my angle on the sideline, but then the first view you could see the cleat. So that's a great football team, and I'm sure we'll see him again at some point in the playoffs. So now we're happy with the win now, and he's got to wear white cleats next time. That's my advice for him.
White cleats might have helped though. I mean, it would have made it really tough to differentiate, the end of the toe and the white on the field. So he's probably right about that. Got to wear them white. Maybe the white cleats would have helped. And Roquan Smith, and he actually had a personal shot. He actually called out one of the a brand new Kansas City Chief, by the way. He called him out. Remember, there was a play where Patrick Mahomes was out of bounds, and it looked as if one of the Ravens players, Roquan Smith, hit him out of bounds late, and he fell. And a lot of people made a big fuss about it and said there should have been a penalty on that, and there wasn't. Well, Roquan Smith was asked about that play in the post game, hey, that was a no call. Did you, what did you do in that situation? What did you think of it? Here's what Roquan Smith had to say, but at the end here, he took it personal that one of the Kansas City Chiefs players came over to challenge him. Here's Roquan Smith.
Oh, he flopped. He flopped. That's why the referees didn't call it. It was a great no call by the ref. But whoever 88 is, I don't know who he is, but he better watch himself. He did a little slick push.
Was there somebody on the sideline that pushed you as well?
Yeah, whoever number 88 is, I have no idea who he is, but I'll see him when I see him.
And Roquan won.
I'll see him when I see him. I think that's Peyton Hendershot. Isn't that I believe that's Peyton Hendershot, who just was traded to the Chiefs from the Cowboys. I believe that's who it is, if I'm not mistaken. So that's who he's calling out. Yeah, but I see you when I see you. That's some trash talk going. Oh, and there's another one. This is I believe it's from a Ravens defensive back. I believe this comes from. And this is kind of, I don't know why he's saying this, but basically saying that if that's the Kansas City Chiefs' best shot, then the Ravens they'll be ready for him next time. Here it is.
This is probably the worst game we're gonna play all year. So if this is their best that they got, I mean, good luck in the postseason.
Good luck in the postseason. To the team trying to three-peat. Come on, man. You're 1-5 versus this team.
Come on.
What are you talking about?
Good.
And by the way, it's probably the worst game they're going to play, too.
Yeah, that's your best shot, beating us. We played terribly. It had nothing to do with what you did against us.
I go that's a bad look. Bad optics for that dude. Probably should have kept that one to yourself. But there is some bad blood developing between these teams, and it was close. That was a thriller, man. That was a great game. It really was. But Lamar Jackson's got to figure something out. 1-5 versus the Chiefs now. He's 1-5 versus the Chiefs. He's 2-4 in the playoffs. I think he's 1-3 versus the Steelers. That's a different discussion altogether. That's in division, but he's got to figure something out because there's a blueprint now the Chiefs have that works pretty effectively versus Lamar Jackson, whatever it is. And they face multiple versions of Lamar Jackson now too. The pocket passing Lamar Jackson with the spread offense and the old school Lamar Jackson offense, which was more of a ground and pound with the quarterback run game. Still can't beat the Kansas City Chiefs. So they got to figure something out. All right, we'll come back. We'll get into it. We got a Rangers report coming up on the other side, but of course, mostly we're NFL. We're going to talk about the Cowboys and their matchup versus the Browns. We'll talk about the Texans and their matchup versus the Colts a little bit. We'll hear more from Steve Sarkisian. He claims he likes being the villain. We'll get into that on the outside. Hear from Sark talking about the Texas-Michigan matchup a little bit, and we got Rod's rant. So we are jam-packed in the 9 o'clock hour. Don't go anywhere. Right here on the Rodcast, featuring Patrick Davis on Lifetime Longhorn. Rod Davis coming back on the horn. Welcome back to the Rodcast. It is a Freak Flag Feel Good, Fake It Till You Make It. Ric Flair, woo! Football 512 Friday edition of the Rodcast. And the 512 Friday means my man Patrick is playing jams from local bands and artists, very talented human beings that you have a chance to catch live right here in the ATX. Who we jamming right now, Patrick?
This is the Peterson Brothers. They are playing Saturday at the Continental Club.
Nice. I like that. It's a nice little upbeat jam. Feels like a Friday kind of jam. All right, very upbeat, kind of pick your spirits up. You should be excited. Got a great football weekend on the horizon because the NFL weekend officially kicks off. Or we had it last night, but officially kicks off. So we'll talk Cowboys and we'll talk a little bit of Texans. Get you a preview of both of those matchups. We'll also get into more of the Texas-Michigan matchup. That is the big college football game of the weekend. We'll hear from Steve Sarkisian talking about traveling on the road, hostile environment, us against the world. We'll hear him talking about his mindset when it comes to a big road game like this for the Longhorns. And also, we got a Rangers report coming up a little bit later on, so we'll squeeze that in too for you Rangers fans. So don't go anywhere. Raj Rant, that'll be coming up next segment. Probably just make Raj Rant a Texas-Michigan preview. Let's be honest. We'll just jam our last Texas-Michigan preview in there for Raj Rant of the day. So you want to stick around for that. So we got a ton to get to. Oh, speaking of Texas-Michigan, Patrick comes up with the topic for the Big Fat Poll of the day, and it is a Michigan topic, or at least related to that Texas-Michigan game. Patrick, give the folks the topic for the Big Fat Poll of the day.
Big Fat Poll of the day today. How many points will Texas score against Michigan? Right now, we're at 62% that have it between 20 and 30. 30% that have it between over 30 plus. So 30% of people say that, which puts us at 6.6% for 10 to 20 and about 1.5% for 0 to 10. So just a couple votes there for anything below 20 points coming. I thought we'd get a few more in that 10 to 20. I thought we'd have a few more people, but I'm telling you, Rod, we're now at 9 o'clock on a Friday, and I haven't gotten to the part yet where I feel really, really anxious about it, which normally in these big games, you get more anxious. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Hopefully the Texas team still has that anxiousness in them and they're ready for it and they're ready to go. I figure playing on the road, that'll make it happen for you when you walk in the building anyway. But I'm pretty happy with the fact that we all seem pretty confident right now.
I know. I hate that we're all so confident. I do. This could easily just be rat poison.
But
here's rat poison. This could be us drinking the Flavor Aid, and it's not really Kool-Aid. But the thing is, Texas is actually they're going to be good this year. And I think they are a good team. And I've looked at Michigan, and trust me, I try to reverse engineer all this stuff and look at how does Texas lose this game, or how is Michigan going to beat Texas? And there are not a lot of ways that Michigan can do it. They got like one or two ways to do it: run the football, and play suffocating defense. And if they don't play that suffocating defense, they give up some plays, and I think they will. And they can't just run the ball consistently and pound the rock against Texas, because they won't, because they didn't run it that effectively versus Fresno State. Then I don't see Michigan winning. I don't see. I said I'm not saying Texas is going to blow them out. Some of y'all are. I'm not saying Texas is going to blow them out. I say they'll win by double digits, though.
No, I mean,
confident saying that.
And then you throw in the fact of that Michigan fans don't seem that confident either. Really throws it off. Wait, we had that viral clip that went around earlier amongst Texas fans of that one Michigan, we'll say analyst that predicted that if Texas if they could hold Texas to 10 points or whatever it was, and he doesn't think that Texas is going to score more than 10 points, and he went through it. The best part of that clip is the other like three guys on the podcast, 3 or 4 other guys. He goes, so Texas -7 is the easiest bet in the world, right? And they all go, yeah, which means all the rest of them are like, no, Texas wins by a touchdown easy. The rest of everyone else on the panel automatically agreed Texas wins by a touchdown easy. And then one guy goes like, I don't think they score more than 10. So it's funny that even the rest of the group of people that were on that podcast were like, funny. Nope, don't think Michigan.
I didn't watch the rest of it. I just seen the clip.
It's just that last little clip of it. The last little clip, he goes, everyone else, Texas -7 is the easiest bet, and they all go, yeah.
That is fantastic. I literally, because like I said, all I've seen is the clip online. I'm like, I don't know if I agree with him. Listen, I'm not gonna hate on anybody's opinions. You want to have a hot take, have a hot take, and because sometimes you end up being that contrarian opinion. You're the only one that saw it and hit it right, and then I've been that guy. And you can go on, your podcast, go on the radio next thing and go, I tried to tell y'all, but nobody wants to listen to me. But I don't really see it here. I'm with you. I almost feel my anxiety is of how confident I am.
Exactly.
That's where the anxiety is coming from. Like, I got to be missing an angle here. I'm missing something. I got to be missing something. It can't be this easy. But football is a simple game, complicated by simple men. It's a simple game. And right now, I just think Texas has more talent, and I just think they're better. Like, and I think they are a touchdown better than Michigan is right now on the road. So I agree with Vegas. I think that's now if you got it at 3.5, even better, but I still think at 7, it's a pretty good bet. I'd take it against this Michigan team. I might still. I don't know. I might still. We'll see if I can put my money where my mouth is. All right, so we'll get to some more Texas-Michigan conversation coming up, and we'll also get to some NFL news notes and nuggets coming up. We'll talk about the Cowboys and the Texans, and we got a Rangers report, so we got a lot of things we're going to hit. But first, let's get the Horn headlines. So let's get updated, educated, and informed with all the top stories of the day with Patrick Davis and the Horn headlines.
All right, your Horn headlines brought to you by Top Gun Rentals and Lawn Equipment. In the MLB, the Astros lost the last game of their series 1-0 to the Reds yesterday, getting swept and knocking them to 5-5 in their last 10 games. Hunter Brown had a quality start, pitching 6 scoreless innings, striking out 6, but the offense could only muster 4 hits. The Astros now return home to take on the Diamondbacks, sending Framber Valdez to the mound tonight. The Rangers won the first game of their series with the Angels 3-1 last night, with Adolis Garcia's first inning 3-run homer powering the team to victory. Cody Bradford pitched 6 innings, only giving up 1 run in one of his best outings since returning from injury. And the win is the 3rd straight for the Rangers and the 8th in the last 10 games. Gerson Garavito gets a start tonight for the Rangers after being called up from the minors earlier this week. And in the NFL, the Chiefs pulled off a 27-20 win over the Ravens in the season kickoff last night after a game-tying touchdown was reversed in the final seconds due to Isaiah Likely's toes landing just out of bounds. Xavier Worthy made the most of his opportunity, scoring 2 touchdowns on 3 touches with 68 yards of total offense. Tonight, the Packers take on the Eagles in Sao Paulo, Brazil, as the rest of the league begins on Sunday with the Texans starting their season in Indianapolis against the Colts and Dallas traveling to Cleveland to face the Browns. And that's your Horn headlines.
All right, thank you, Patrick, for the Horn headlines. We appreciate those. All right, let's talk a little bit about the Cowboys and the Texans. Next segment, we'll play some of that Sark audio and then break down the Texas-Michigan matchup just one more time for you. And then we'll also get into that Rangers report on the other side, too. But let's start off talking about the Texans, then we'll make our way to the Cowboys. I'm feeling real good about this Texans matchup versus the Colts to start out the season. First of all, because of all the additions that the Texans made, bringing in Danielle Hunter on the defensive side of the ball, bringing in Stephon Diggs on the offensive side of the ball, signing Joe Mixon on the offensive side of the ball. I just made so many upgrades offensively, and the product last year obviously surprised everyone, exceeded expectations. Now the expectations are high. They'll have a tougher schedule, but against the Colts, I'll say this, for the Texans, they had, and this is a team I think ultimately that they had a good rush defense last year. I think they allowed 96 yards on the ground on average last season, which is pretty good. But against the Colts, for some reason, they allowed an average of, in their 2 games, 176 rushing yards. And, Anthony Richardson was hurt. I think maybe he was available for one of those, but obviously Jonathan Taylor in the backfield is one of the best.
Yeah, I don't think was Jonathan Taylor available for both. I think Jonathan Taylor was out for the first one, and then Anthony Richardson was for the second. Because remember, Jonathan Taylor had that holdout and everything.
I think you're right.
So I don't think they had them both for either.
So now you just freaked me out even more. Thanks, Patrick. Thank you. 9:15 on a Friday. I'm like, oh, damn it. I know they didn't have Anthony Richards for one of them because he was hurt for most of the season.
I may be wrong, but I know that Jonathan
Taylor.
No,
I think you might be right about that. Now that you said something, that does sound familiar. I think you're right. I think you might be right about that. So obviously that's the concern. As Patrick mentioned, that's your big issue in this game because they can control the line of scrimmage. They can run the football. They can control the line of scrimmage. They'll control the game, limit possessions for CJ Stroud. So, and the Texans last year were 6th last year in rushing yards allowed. So they were a good rushing defense. And for some reason, it didn't match up well with the Colts rushing offense. That's something to keep in mind. Also, the Colts play a lot of cover 3. Matter of fact, that's kind of their bread and butter coverage. That's their go-to coverage. This could end up being a really good sign for the Texans because CJ Stroud last year was one of the most, if not the most effective QB when facing cover 3. He faced a lot of cover 3 last year because you're going to, make a young quarterback earn the 2 two deep safeties, right? You got to earn two deep safeties for me. I'm not going to just put two deep safeties and allocate resources to stop the pass when I don't even know if you're an efficient, effective passer from the pocket in the NFL. So rookie quarterbacks will often get a lot of cover three thrown at them, and then teams will adapt and say, okay, you know what? He is an elite passer from the pocket. We got to put two deep safeties back there, put a cap or put a ceiling, an umbrella over this defense, and then make him work underneath it, make him exercise patience and throw the short intermediate game. CJ Stroud will get that respect this year, but last year it was a lot of cover three. As a matter of fact, they faced cover three at the third highest rate in the NFL because of the rookie quarterback thing. So now he's going to face, I think a lot more two high safeties, a lot more cover fours, a lot more cover sixes, two man, maybe a part of that as well. But the Colts, their bread and butter is cover three. They run more of it than anybody else in the league. They run cover threes. Gus Bradley's defense, so he loves cover three at about a 55% rate. And CJ Stroud is great at, deciphering and diagnosing and eviscerating cover three. And Nico Collins, by the way, Nico Collins versus cover three, he's the third most effective wide receiver in yards per route run facing cover three defenses, 3.67 yards per route run. The only receivers that are better versus cover three, Justin Jefferson and Tyreek Hill. So it's pretty damn good. I like that, but I don't like that Texans defense potentially giving up a lot of rushing yards versus the Colts. So you want to watch that. If they're holding the Colts rushing game to minimal gains and they're essentially neutralizing it to a certain extent, they're not running wild on the Texans, that's a good sign. And depending on how much cover three that they're gonna play, because that is the bread and butter go-to coverage for the Colts. If they play a lot of it, that's a really good sign for the Texans, because that would mean that CJ Stroud's probably eating. He's probably getting some really prolific numbers, because that's one of his favorite coverages, and he's the most effective quarterback facing that coverage. All right, so that's
just to give you an update. I looked at the stats from last game. So Jonathan Taylor did not play in either game.
Okay, that's not
and good. Anthony Richardson played a quarter before he left with a concussion. Didn't play in the second game.
Oh no!
Just so if we're comparing they were not factors in either one of these games. Really,
that's Jonathan
Anthony Richardson scored 2 touchdowns in the first quarter and then left with a concussion in the first matchup last season. And then Sam Ehlinger was the quarterback for the entire time in the second game. Gardner Minshew came in the first game.
Bam Sam.
So
okay,
we give you
freaking out. See, not good.
Just to go back and check the books on that one.
All right, there you go. I still feel confident that the Texans are favored by 3, but not as confident as I was 90 seconds ago.
Zach Moss was the guy who ran for a lot of those. He is now in Green Bay, right? No, he's not Green Bay. Where is he at? I can't remember where he's at.
I can't remember where he's at.
No, because Josh Jacobs went there. He went. I can't remember where Zach Moss went off the top of my head.
Yeah.
I know he went somewhere, and he is the main back there.
Yeah. No, see, I said
Bengals. You replaced Joe Mixon.
Okay. Yeah. Like I said, I felt better about it. I still feel good about it. Just maybe not as confident, like I said, as I was maybe like 90 seconds ago before man Patrick let me know that neither one of those guys was available, and now both of them will be completely healthy. That's all right. I said Texas defense should be much improved with Danielle Hunter, the linebacking upgrade. I like Jalen Petrie putting him in that role at nickel. This is the type of game where it's going to help that he's at nickel, because you're going to need a spy on Anthony Richardson. I imagine spy on him, especially on passing downs. But they use him in the quarterback run game a lot, like the design quarterback runs. And that's scary too. Now, will they do that after him coming off an injury? I don't know. They may decide they'll pursue less of that. That could be the case. But I don't know. That's something to look at and consider if you're the Texans. All right. So we'll get to some more Texans talk. We'll get to some Texas football conversation next segment. But the Cowboys facing off against the Browns. This is another game that is really intriguing for a lot of different reasons, because the running back room for the Cowboys concerns me. I don't want to overly stress out about it, because the Cowboys offense is still going to be really, really dynamic. It was one of the top 5 offenses in the NFL last year. It's going to be really good. But going up against that Browns defense, which is I think pass defense wise, they had the best pass defense in the league last year. Total defense, I believe they were the best total defense in the league. Scoring defense, they were, I think, like 12th or something like that. But they really know how to play the pass. They play the pass really well, and they play a lot of man coverage. Now, that's good news for the Cowboys. Bad news is Browns are really good playing the pass. Their pass defense was the best in the league. The good news is they did it by deploying a lot of man coverage. And if Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb love anything, it's seeing man coverage, because there's not a lot of DBs out there, and the Browns don't have any that can line up against CeeDee Lamb and play on man-to-man and lock them down. They just don't have guys like that. So that means that they'll probably, I think, put a safety over the top of them or roll coverage to CD, because CD's ascent last year, and people forget about it, but remember, it didn't happen immediately at the start of last year. It was like after like the 5th or 6th game of the season, and then CeeDee Lamb really started to dominate target share, and then he just became extremely prolific and the lifeblood and identity of that Cowboys passing game. And that's when their pass rate started to go to 60+% for the Cowboys, even on early downs, and they decided to just lean on the pass and lean on CeeDee Lamb's ability to separate and beat man coverage, beat zone coverage. It didn't matter. But now that he has established himself, got the big contract, I wonder if defenses will decide, all right, we're taking him away. We don't have to worry about the run game. We'll stop the run game with a light box, or invite the Cowboys to run the football, because we'd rather have them running the football than Dak and MVP caliber level throwing the football and throwing it to CeeDee Lamb. So roll coverage, take CeeDee Lamb out of it, or try your best to take CeeDee Lamb out of it. Dare the Cowboys to run the football, because I don't think that that's the strength of the offense. And then make Brandon Cooks and make Jake Ferguson beat you. Not that they can't, but that's what I think the Browns are going to try to do. So it'll be interesting. And that Browns defense is good, man. They got playmakers all over that defense. Switching to the Cowboys defense, I like the Cowboys defense, especially their edge rushers, DeMarcus Lawrence and Micah Parsons. Love the corners, but obviously Deron Bland's got the injury now, so they haven't had their all-pro corners together, because one of them is always dealing with an injury, since they both have been declared all-pro status. So that may be something that the Browns try to pick on, that other cornerback spot opposite Trevon Diggs. That's a little concerning early on. Cowboys should, make adjustments and accommodations for that, maybe provide more help to that cornerback spot. So that could be something that comes back to haunt the Cowboys in this matchup too. But man, that Browns offense is loaded. It's all about whether Deshaun Watson is anything close to, we talked about this yesterday, anything close to the best version of himself, which he hasn't been in 4 years. And everybody keeps holding out hope. This will be the year that Deshaun Watson finally gets back to that old form. And I'm not sure if he does. If he does, and hell, I'm sure there have been flashes of it, but nothing consistent for the Browns that reflects that he's going to get back there. Maybe this is the year, though.
No, I mean, and honestly, you see what they did with Joe Flacco last year coming in, and you just want to say that was Joe Flacco with Nick Chubb getting hurt late in that season, and they were still making a playoff run. That's one where you have to go to Deshaun and go, just, you don't have to be the hero anymore. We don't even need that. We need you to win football games. So try and tone a lot of it down. Just go out there, take what they give you, go out there and try and get some yards, do what you can do. But we don't need you to be the hero. When you start feeling better and you start getting there, let's get there. But we said he's played since that 2020 season where he had statistically an amazing season and the Texans were bad. He's played 12 football games. In the 2021, 2022, 2023 season combined, 12 football games.
I can't believe that.
So
that is,
that's not enough football to play to be an elite quarterback, because you're going to have to work yourself back into it. And it's going to take a little bit for him to get back in the swing of it. I mean, you talk about just the players you've scouted and actually seen on the field. You haven't seen a lot of these guys because they're newer guys. How much do teams switch up in 3 seasons? Plus you're in a new division and you just haven't seen the players you're going to be playing as much as you have before. So there's a lot of a curve in it that it's going to take them a little bit. You want the Cowboys to be advantageous about that. You have Trevon Diggs, who's a ball hawk. If I'm coaching the Browns, I am trying to get Deshaun Watson to just take what they give you and not try and do too much. But we could see him go out there and try and put the cape on again because that's kind of what he wants to do. That's what he was known for before he got traded.
Yeah, that's even what he did with the Texans. Even
Yeah.
that great year in 2020. I mean, they were bad. They were bad. They were 4-12 team, but he had a top 5 year as a quarterback. And I don't know if he'll ever get back to that form again. But like you said, he doesn't have to be there for the Browns to be successful because they're loaded with tons of talent on the offensive side and the defensive side of the ball. All right, so that little Cowboys and Browns preview. Oh, one other quick nugget about the Texans. Why I do feel good about this. For some reason, I don't know why Colts cannot win a season opener. They are 0-9-1 in season openers since 2013. Longest active winless streak in week 1 in the league. I don't know what it is about the Colts. They don't win week 1 games. I feel good about the Texans in a week 1 matchup against them. We'll see if they can change that trend too. All right, so there's some NFL discussion talking about the Texans and the Cowboys. We come back, we'll hear from Steve Sarkisian, and also we'll get into that Texas-Michigan matchup, give you our last breakdown and preview, and we got a Rangers report that we'll jump into on the other side. All of that and more right here on the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis. I'm Lifetime Longhorn. Rod Babers coming back on the Horn. All right, welcome back to the Rodcast. Time to get to the Texas-Michigan breakdown and preview. We've been previewing it and breaking it down all week long, and we'll continue to do it. We'll hear from Steve Sarkisian toward the end of this segment as well. But first and foremost, I think the top factor or key to the game for me is going to be Quinn. I mean, this is a Quinn Ewers game. I think you got to put the ball in Quinn Ewers' hands, and I think you got to trust your starting quarterback in the big house on the road to have that capability I talk about, to be able to put the cape on and be Superman when you need him to. And this is the game for it, right? And we read the quote from Mel Kiper, who says Quinn still got a chance to be QB1 in this draft class. This is the kind of game that could help him leapfrog a Shadur Sanders and a Carson Beck to be the number one quarterback in his class. And if you're the top quarterback in the class, you got a chance to be number one overall, QB1. All right, 1-1, which is every, I'm sure, player's dream, but definitely a quarterback of the ilk of a Quinn Ewers. And the reason this is so compelling, because everybody wants to know, all the scouts want to know how Quinn will handle the pressure, figuratively and literally, how he's going to handle the pressure that Don Wink Martindale is going to apply. He's known for being one of the blitz happiest defensive minds in football at any level. Blitz rate last 6 years, third, first, sixth, first, and second. So he's coming. And there's sophisticated blitzes too. It's not just caveman blitzes where he's sending the guy off the edge every time and zero blitzes. He's got some of those, but he's got simulated pressures, and he's got fire zones that you're going to see as well. You're going to, I think, see some zone pressures too, and some zone blitzes coming from him, trying to confuse Quinn and force him to hold on to the ball a little bit longer, and then maybe make an erratic decision, ill-advised throw. Versus Colorado State, they didn't pressure him much, only pressured him twice, but those were his two worst plays: the interception and the sack. He was really efficient, got rid of the football in 2.17 seconds, and I think most of the time that'll be the case versus Michigan. That's what you need, a quick passing game to insulate you in pass protection. But there are going to be times where he's going to want to go downfield. There are going to be times where Sark wants to dial up a big play, and if that time, that play call coincides with the right pressure package or the right blitz, then you could get pressure on Quinn. And if you get pressure on Quinn, that 12 to 15 times where there's actually pressure on Quinn, what's his mindset? How does he respond to it? Because if he makes the right play and he makes the right decision, then Texas is in a good position. He throws it away, or let's say he makes a great throw, or he's able to escape the pressure, climb up in the pocket, and make it throw that way and escape the pressure and buy more time. If he makes the right play, all right, and the right decision, Texas is gonna win this game, and they're gonna, I think, win decisively. But if on a third of those plays, or let's say 3 of those 15 plays, 3 to 5 of those 15 plays, he makes the wrong decision, ill-advised throw, interception, takes a negative play or a sack, tackle for loss, that strip sack, that could end up being disastrous and flipping the power balance, if you will, in this matchup for Michigan. And they're opportunistic, by the way. Last year, they were top team in the country in turnover margin, top 3 in interceptions, top 5 in takeaways. They had 2 of them last week. They're opportunistic. And they're going to apply pressure. So that's the biggest question for me, because Quinn, and he hasn't handled pressure really well. Pressure to sack rate, 2023, 25%. If you look at Pro Football Focus, they got him at 24%. The sack rate versus pressure by Sports Info Solutions has him upwards of 30%. Stats War has him upwards of 30% in his sack rate. His pressure to sack rate versus Colorado State was 50%. They got 2 pressures on him. They got 1 sack. So how he handles pressure, that to me is the number one key to the game, because Don Wink Martindale, that's his signature. I think he'll handle it well. Got Texas winning. Also, I don't expect Texas to be able to run the football against Michigan. I'm going to give them more credit than that. This is a defense with 4, 5, maybe even more NFL players than that. And a lot of them are on the front. They got 3 of them on the defensive line alone, in Josiah Stewart and, of course, Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant. I'll give them enough credit and say they'll be able to neutralize Texas' run game, which is why your passing game has got to be an extension of the run game. The screen game is going to be important. Yeah, the RPO is going to be important. Your quick game. is going to be really, really important. And I think you got to start this game with the pass. Early down pass rate, it's got to be hovering around 60%. First 5 drives versus Colorado State, you're around 58%. Last year versus Bama, you're about 56% early down pass rate. 58% versus Oklahoma last year. 58% versus K-State. That was a ranked team. 62% early on versus Oklahoma State. Early down pass rate. That's when you get Quinn in this groove. You lead with your opponent's fear. And Texas is, I think, deep at wide receiver. They got a first-round talent at quarterback, 4 or 5 offensive linemen returning. Teams fear your passing game. Nobody right now fears the Texas running game. Should they? Maybe. But Michigan don't fear your running game. I would leave what Michigan is most concerned about and what stresses them out right now the most, and it would be the Texas passing game. And I would stress them with spread concepts. I would go empty a lot. I would break out the 4 wide receiver package out of your 10 personnel, the red package. You used at Alabama. Hadn't shown it at Texas. Great way to break tendency. I would throw that lots of motion. Hell, Andy Reid had a 90% pre-snap motion rate in the first half versus Baltimore. If I'm sorry, those numbers I like. He's usually around 55%, but when he's really in his bag, he's upward. He increases that usage of motion to probably 60%. It should be 70, 80%. I'd like it to be 90%. Because I think more motion is going to force Michigan to have to adjust on the fly, and then you could maximize your speed and maximize leverage, getting guys on the move. That's a nightmare. Remember, they asked Mike Zimmer, what modern concept gives you the most trouble? He said motion, pre-snap motion. He said it's hell on a defense. Force you to have to overly communicate, and it changes responsibilities literally, pre-snap and even sometimes at the time of the snap. And targets to motion last game, 40% explosive play rate, 40% first down rate, 80% completion percentage. It tracks the last 3 years. Lots of motion, lots of targets to motion. Defense. And the defense for Texas, I think, is a simple game plan. I think it's a 2-step game plan. Sell out to stop the run. Bare fronts, 5-man fronts, penny fronts. Hell, you can go 5 down linemen if you want to, because Johnny Nance is really creative. Take their strength away, like you did with Colorado State. Took the passing game away. They threw for less than 75 yards. Yeah, they ran for over 100 yards, but hey, you asked them to beat you left-handed, and they could not. Same thing with Michigan. Ask Michigan to beat you left-handed. Ask them to beat you with the quarterbacks and their passing game. Sell out to stop the run. Tell your DBs, I got to put you in man-to-man coverage, and if they can't hold up versus the Michigan passing game, well, you know what? We need to know that right now, because we got bigger fish to fry then. We're going to have bigger headaches in the future. So I leave those guys on an island, sell out, stop the run, got to win first down. If they're in second and long and third and long, that's good for Texas. If they're in second and medium and third and medium and third and short, that's not so good for Texas. You got to win first down, and you got to sell out to stop the run to do it. And I got to leave my DBs on an island. I think they can hold up versus the Michigan pass attack. And guys, they don't throw the football past 10 yards very well. Last game versus Fresno State, 1 of 5 on passes, 10 yards or more down the field. 1 interception, and that 1 pass of more than 10 yards was literally at 10.23 yards. It was coasting Loveland, and that goes to step 2. After you stop the run by any means necessary at all costs, stop the run, sell out to do it, give them the pass, invite them to throw the pass to the one-on-one, because I don't think they can do it, but they can if they're throwing to Loveland. So once you stop the run, you got to choke the passing game out by stopping Loveland. He had 9 targets versus Fresno State, 8 receptions, 87 yards. The only target he didn't catch was a drop, and that was on him. Over 10 yards per reception, 5 yards after the catch per reception. That's because his average depth of target is 6 yards. So he's getting it quick, and he's getting it near the line of scrimmage, but he's the only one making plays with it in the passing game. Out of his 8 receptions, 4 went for first downs, 1 went for a touchdown. Got to stop that dude. He was in line 50% of the time, but other times he was out wide. He was in the slot. They move him all around. They got 2 plays of 20-plus yards in that game versus Fresno State, and 1 of them was to Loveland. They got 6 plays of 10-plus yards on the season. 4 of them are to Loveland. Stop the run at all costs. by any means necessary, and then stop Loveland. Have a plan for Loveland. My plan would be Jahdae Barron. You've been bragging about him playing corner and bragging about him playing nickel and saying that he was prepared to play safety in that Colorado State game. Well, this is the perfect game for it. If Loveland is formationally, if he is set up where the safety is going to end up defending him, I'd put Jahdae Barron at safety. If he is aligned where the nickel is going to have to take him, I'd put Jahdae Barron at nickel. Put your best DB on him. Put your best cover guy on him. Hell, if I could, I'd put Malik Muhammad on him. if there's a way for me to do it, I'd be like, nah, I want Malik Muhammad to be on him. He's big. He's probably going to be the first tight end drafted off the board. He is their passing game. So you got to stop him after you stop the run. But you only get to earn the right to have to stop Loveland. I do think you'll get double moves early. You'll get stalk, block, and go. You'll get the hitch and go, the slant and go, the out and up, because the only thing they really throw are those short, quick concepts, the slant, the hitch, the out. It's the only thing they really throw with any efficiency and effectiveness, and they need to be able to figure out a way to get chunk yards in the passing game, and the out and up, deception-based passing game, out and up, hitch and go, slant and go is the best way to do it. Also, I think you're going to see the stalk, block, and go. Fake wide receiver screen, stalk, block, and go. Fake side is going to block and go downfield. You could get the double pass. Any way for them to get a cheap chunk yardage play down the field. And I think you could get that early when Texas is uber aggressive and really, really excited and maybe overly aggressive, and use Texas aggression against them. Got to be on the lookout for that. But to me, it's a simple game plan to stop their defense. For Texas to stop them on defense. Stop the run. Stop coasting Loveland. All right. There you go. That's my real quick synopsis of the preview for Texas versus Michigan and what Texas needs to do. Oh, also, they didn't use play action a lot versus Fresno State. I think on 3 out of their 26 plays. They only threw the football more than 10 yards down the field on 4 occasions. Like five of those, but only 4 of them were actually 10 yards down the field. One was right at 10 yards. But I do think you'll get play action early in this game. You'll get play action and a deep shot early on this game, because Texas, I think, will be really, really aggressive. And we'll see that Johnny Nansen effect once again of him coming up with something creative to take away the strength of his opponent. All right, there you go. That's Texas, Michigan. Let's hear from Steve Sarkisian really quickly about going on the road to play in that hostile environment. He's been a player before and had to play in hostile environments. He talked about how that has really shaped his mindset and his mentality when it comes to being a coach and coaching his players up by playing on how to handle these hostile road environments.
Actually, my OMG moment came as a player. I was a player at BYU, and we were pretty good. I think we might have been 2-0, and we had beaten A&M in week 1. We had, I think, beaten like Arkansas State or somebody in week 2, and we went to Washington, and we went into Husky Stadium, and it was so loud that I just hadn't been in an environment that was loud like that. I ended up getting sacked, I think 7 or 8 times. We got beat, and that was our only loss that year. We went 14-1. But in that moment, it's there's another level in your mind. You go to, wow, there's another level of what opposing stadiums can feel like and be like. Especially when there's some hatred towards the opponent when you walk in. For whatever reason, people can generate hate in a lot of different ways. And so for me, now I've learned to relish those opportunities. There's something that I kind of relish being the villain. I kind of like going in there thinking, man, there's 100 versus 120,000, and we're the villain, and it's okay being the villain, and how do we create that deafening silence, and how do we go about that? And that comes about by our style of play, that comes about by our execution, that comes about by sticking together, playing as one. But I love those opportunities as much as I love playing at home. I like that too, because I think you find out a lot about yourself and a lot about your team.
All right, and this next cut is Sark talking about really the depth. This is a first world problem, right? This is crying from a yacht, as Sark describes it. What do you do with all that depth? How do you keep all the players happy, rotating all the players, try to make sure that all these really, high-level players can see the field? Here is Steve Sarkisian.
Really simple. We just reiterate to the players: don't count your reps, make your reps count. And it's a really simple formula that way. It's not how many times you're on the field; it's what you do when you're on the field, and maximizing those opportunities when they come your way. Um, Oddly enough, Ryan Wingo and Jonte Cook didn't start in the game, but I think they might have had maybe the most yards and I think 7 catches between them, as backups in essence. And so we really don't look at them as backups. We look at them. We've got a great rotation at the receiver spot. Obviously, Matt and IB played really well for us. And the one guy who started, DeAndre Moore, didn't have a catch. And so you just don't know in our system. And so again, we just want to make our reps count. We don't try to count our reps, and we just try to play to the best of our ability. And with this group now more than ever, we tell them to empty the tank, because the next guy can go in, you can get your win back, and then we'll get you back out on the field.
All right, there you go. That's Sark talking about, hey, how you get those guys out there. I like that. Don't count your reps, make your reps count. It's damn good.
Yeah, he's got a lot of those little things
yeah,
he's picked up over
more
the years.
And more.
And what's funny is you assume he's got some. I mean, he's coached with 2 of the greatest college coaches of all time, in Pete Carroll and Nick Saban. So you assume he's picked up some of them, and it's probably ones he was like, "What did he say when he said that?" And are they both retired now? Let me call.
No, you write those down, and you get a good one. Like, well, I'm writing that down. That's a good one. I do that now. I'm like, well, that's a good one. I'm gonna use that one day. Yeah. All right. We got this with my kids. I'm gonna use that one. Don't write that down. All right. Let's get to the Rangers report while we got some time here.
The Rangers report is brought to you by Texas Truck and Trailer.
Congrats, Rangers fans. They've actually, how about this? Over the last 10 games, the Rangers trying to close out the season, glass half full, 8-2 over the last 10 games. That's the best record in a 10-game span for the Rangers since I believe that August 5th through the 15th. I believe they also were 8-2 during that time span. So good for the Rangers. Also, that 3-1 win for them. That was a really cool bright spot. Corey Bradford, basically he's a starter for you now. He's a starting pitcher. And I remember at one point, the offense scored 3 runs in the first inning, which is all they needed for that 3-1 win over the Angels. But at one point, there was a discussion about whether he was going to be a legit starting pitcher. I think people thought that he was going to come in and just be more of a rotational guy and be someone that contributes as a swing man. And what he's done recently is essentially prove those folks who had that opinion of him wrong, and that he's done more than enough to prove that he could be a big league starter. He had 6 innings of 1-run ball that he pitched in that 3-1 win over the Angels on Thursday night. That counts as a quality start, and which means he would have recorded a quality start in each of his last 5 outings. That's the longest such streak by a Texas starter in 2024, and the longest since Nathan Eovaldi threw 7 straight quality starts from April 18th and May 23rd in 2023. So, hey, like I said, these are the bright spots you're looking for if you're a Rangers fan towards the end of the season.
Yeah, because Bradford,
things like this.
Bradford had gotten hurt. He started off the season pretty well, got a few wins on his record, and then it'd come back and was pitching okay, but not pitching great. And now it's just escalating every time to get a little bit better and a little bit better. So another bright spot there. And it's, they're playing really good baseball right now. They're also in a stretch of playing some teams that, you need to beat, and they're beating them, which is.
And there's no pressure either. There's no pressure right now.
No pressure. You're beating the teams you need to beat. Those are all good signs of, a good clubhouse. You're going into the right place, going into the offseason and reload and get ready for next season. But they're fun to watch right now because they're playing good. They're playing winning baseball.
I agree. Yeah, if you're a Rangers fan, you got to be excited at least about the way they're in the season. They're not quitting. People don't have to just quit on the season. They see if they want to end it on a high note. All right, we want to end it on a high note as well. So that's why we have Who Said That? That's when Patrick plays pieces of audio from the sports world, sometimes beyond the sports world, and based on the context clues or familiarity of the voice, you have to identify and recall who said that. We'll play that when we come back right here on the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis. I'm Lifetime Longhorn. Rod Babers coming back on the horn.
The Rangers Report is brought to you by Texas Truck and Trailer, your premier truck accessory dealer.
Welcome back to the Rodcast. It is a 512 Friday edition of the Rodcast. That's when my co-host, the Idealionaire Patrick Davis, plays jams from local bands and artists, very talented human beings that you have a chance to catch live right here in the ATX. Who are jamming right now, Patrick?
This is the Bell Sounds. They're doing a album release party Saturday at 3:10 alongside Ray Prim doing an album release party. So Zana Schofel is on that. So 3 really, really talented artists all there for you Saturday at 3:10. And you can feel bad. I believe Ray Prim is a Florida State fan, so we can feel sorry for him and go out and enjoy his music, because be a lot of sad songs, I'm sure. A lot of sad songs.
Sad songs. There'll be sad songs, too, if the Longhorns don't pull off the win versus Michigan. And that's what the topic for the Big Fat Poll is about. Patrick wants to know how many points will Texas score against Michigan, and give us your final score prediction below. And the choices are 0 to 10 points, 10 to 20 points, 20 to 30 points, and 30-plus points. And 61% of you who took this, who actually voted in this poll, said that Texas will score between 20 and 30 points. And that's kind of where I am, too, the kind of the sweet spot. Speaking of Michigan stories, before we get to who said that, a couple of random Michigan stories here. Connor Stallions, this is a real story. According to Dennis Dodd, he got a head coaching job, an interim head coaching job with a high school at Detroit Mumford High School. So the coach had a mild stroke, and apparently they asked him to sit in as the interim head coach. So that's a storyline to follow. Michigan related. Also, Michigan related story. It has been stated that Sharon Moore doesn't have a contract with Michigan right now, that he's operating without a contract.
So he's just the head coach,
yesterday.
But no, that's weird.
Exactly. That's what I said. I was like, ooh, that ain't good. That's not good at all. His agent is terrible.
Yeah.
Dude, get a better agent than that. What's your agent got you out there? Because you're about to be suspended by the NCAA. And they could just part ways with you without any guaranteed money on your. Oh, that's bad. Yeah, it says here Sharon Moore is coaching without an officially signed contract. The Michigan AD confirmed it.
That is ridiculous. That is crazy.
That ain't good. Sharon, come on, man.
On. You got to ask her some more.
Jim Harbaugh basically gave you the job. And then you gonna screw it up by not getting the contract signed? What are you doing? And if they fire you in a year, at least they'd have to pay you if they had a contract.
Yeah.
They'd have to pay you, which every school around the country does that. They
Michigan's
fire.
got
Texas
the
still
money.
paying some coaches.
Michigan's got the money. Come on,
I don't
now.
know. That's a dang coaching mistake. Come on, Sharon Moore, man.
Mistake.
Ooh, that's bad. Okay. Also, somebody did remind me. Don't forget, you know who was committed to Michigan before they committed to Texas? Xavier Worthy.
That's true.
Yeah. Like if honestly, if he had went to Michigan, he would still be there right now because he would have not had the stats to go to the NFL early. There's no way, right? He'd still be there. So he'd still be there. So honestly, he'd still be there. We'd be really worried about him too.
He
Right
weighed 210, something like that.
Yeah, he wouldn't be breaking any records at the combine. That's for sure. All right, let's play Who Said That. That's when Patrick plays pieces of audio from the sports world, sometimes beyond. And based on the familiarity of the clues or based on the context clues, you have to guess who said that.
Jason Garrett keeps talking about Xavier Worthy. He's a little skinny guy. Like, he doesn't scare me. I know he's fast, but he doesn't scare me. But no, I agree with Devin. There's no way they're three people.
They get to the 15. It wasn't inside the opening. This is the speedy man, Xavier Worthy, the fastest man to the end zone right away. His first touch, a Kansas City touchdown. Oh, man.
Great sit down as well with Coach Sirianni that we'll hear tomorrow. But how about Xavier Worthy? We were talking about him in the pregame show.
No, somebody was talking about him.
I said if he goes out for a pass. I didn't say if he had a handoff.
Skinny guy.
Right,
Don't worry about him. Yeah, he's fast. Don't worry about him. The first time he touched the ball. Here he is. The first time he touches the ball. Don't worry about him. He's a skinny guy.
First career touch for a touchdown.
1 hour later. All right, there you go. And don't forget, he did catch a touchdown pass, too. That was Rodney Harrison talking trash about Xavier Worthy being too skinny to be a playmaker in the league. Obviously, he's wrong about that. And Tony Dungy giving him a hard time about that freezing cold take that he had.
Rightfully so. That Rodney Harrison trying to play football like he played in 1995.
Exactly. You don't have to have possession wide receivers anymore like that.
He's like, I would take his head off. They're like, yeah, they would have thrown you out of the game, Rodney. Like, it's illegal to make the hits you used to make that you would have done to him. They're trying to, they want these guys.
Yeah, can't. When you won your first Super Bowl, you could do that to the greatest show on turf. You can't do that anymore, man. Oh, good stuff there. All right, Patrick, thank you, brother, for all you do. Great job as always. Remember, the revolution will not be televised. We'll be talking about it right here on the Rodcast. We love you guys. We mean that. Take care of yourselves, but more importantly, take care of each other. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you guys on Monday, same time, same channel. Hook 'em and peace.